for a very short period of time will be for the election of the county council chairperson for the next 2 years and the vice chair. I will at this time open the floor for nominations for chairman of Lawrence County Council.
Council, I'd like to nominate Brown Patterson for chair.
The nomination of Brown Patterson, is there a second?
Second.
There's a second to that. Are there any further nominations for council chairperson? Hearing none, is there a motion to close the nominations?
Motion closed.
Second. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Nominations are closed. Congratulations, Mr. Chairman. I now open the floor for nominations for vice chair of Lawrence County Council.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Ms. Diane Anderson for vice chair of Lawrence County Council.
All right, motion for Diane Anderson. Is there a second? One more call for a second. Hearing none, the nomination fails. Is there another nomination?
Mr.
I'd
Chairman.
like to make a nomination for Garrett McDaniel.
All right, there's a nomination for Garrett McDaniel. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Are there any other nominations?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Jeff Carroll for vice chairman.
I have a nomination for Jeff Carroll. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any other nominations? All right. Hearing none, we will do this. I will call the names, and if you will vote with your uplifted right hand. All those in favor of Garrett McDaniel as vice chair, please raise your right hand. 3 votes. All those in favor of Jeff Carroll for vice chair, please raise your right hand. There are 4 votes. Mr. Carroll, you will be the vice chair. Congratulations. I will this time turn the gavel over to the new chairman and ask the council members to relocate, or at least Mr. Tribble. Welcome back, Mr. Tribble, by the way, to reshuffle, and you'll take the top chair, if you will, Mr. Patterson.
So you'll move over here. We'll move you over here for the vice chair. Either one for y'all, it doesn't matter.
Good evening. I think we've officially been called to order. So we will move quickly into our invocation and pledge of allegiance. I recognize Councilwoman Anderson. Please rise.
Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for life, health, and strength. We ask you to bless us as we continue to go through this coronavirus pandemic. We ask you to heal those that are suffering. We ask that you comfort those who have lost a family member. And we ask that you protect us as we go from activity to activity, as we go through our daily things. We ask that you be with us in this meeting. We ask for your presence as we make decisions concerning the citizens of this county. We ask that we stand in truth, that we make decisions that will be beneficial to all of its citizens, as well as pleasing in your sight. We also ask forgiveness of our many sins. and keep us mindful of your goodness. And as we adjourn this meeting this evening, we ask that you go with us to our homes or to our next destination and keep us safe. This I ask in your Son Jesus' name. Amen.
Y'all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, may be seated. So we've got a good crowd tonight. Thank you all for coming out. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Before I ask for any changes, we do have one, 6D, which is an update on COVID. It's going to be bumped to the top of the list. And the others will still follow after that. Are there any other additions or deletions to the agenda? Seeing none, do I have a motion for the agenda as amended?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 7-0.
Yeah.
Luke.
Motion, Ms.
I recognize your voice.
Okay. All right, second, approval of the minutes from the December 10th meeting. Are there any additions or deletions to the minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes as written?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Do I have a second? Motion by Mr. Carroll, second by Mr. Yance. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, that's 7-0. All right, first up, reports to council. I'll call on Mr. Joey Avery, and I believe you have Mr. Denton.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, members of the council. Normally I give you a COVID update. What I've done is laid a graph on your desk there for your information to see what's happening in Lawrence County. But we have a special guest tonight that's really going to give you a COVID update. We are fortunate to have Mr. Justin Bedingfield, CEO of Prisma Lawrence County campus, be with us, and he's going to give us an overview. Justin?
Good evening. Thank you, members of council, community members. So despite the surge that has come after our holidays, I will say that I'm very thankful that Lawrence County Hospital is part of a larger organization in Prisma Health. There are benefits to being part of an organization that does have resources. However, I will tell you that across the state, those resources are being taxed, very taxed. We are experiencing extremely tightening capacity issues in all of our facilities. While this is becoming difficult, our inpatient numbers are far greater than we saw in the June and July surge, almost double. So I do want to give public thanks to the South Carolina Emergency Management Division, South Carolina Hospital Association, South Carolina Department of Health Environmental Control, and the National Guard. The reason I say that, as part of our efforts to combat the tightening capacities, we have worked to open additional space within the hospital here in Lawrence County, as well as other hospitals across the state. We're very fortunate that the National Guard has been able to send us resources. On the ground right now, we have 8 guardsmen, 4 that would be dedicated to our alternate care site, and 4 that are actually helping in our step-down units right now. So again, very, very grateful there. So that's one way that we're combating our capacity issues. Another way is through the vaccine. So Prisma Health has now, as of today, vaccinated over 20,000 healthcare workers across the state, which is a really good thing. As you all know, we're beginning to open up phase 1B, which is an even better thing. It will take some time for the vaccine to truly take effect and for people to build immunity. So while that's step number 2 in battling this pandemic, we still have other things that we can do. The last one, I'm going to ask for your help and the community's help in some shape, form, or fashion. And a lot of this comes with personal and individual responsibility. We are deep into our 11th month of dealing with this pandemic. 1 year of fighting this fight. Healthcare workers are tired. We're exhausted. I know it's hard for everyone. We all have pandemic fatigue. But we remain in a very, very serious situation. This situation exists throughout our state, our country, our county, right here in Lawrence County. According to state public health officials, positivity rate in South Carolina has been more than 30% for 8 of the last 9 days. Those are record numbers for us. So this means that the risk of any of us, anyone in the county, anyone in the state becoming infected is incredibly high, especially in the upstate and especially here in Lawrence County. So I really want to express our deep concern that unless we take immediate action, we can expect more infections and, unfortunately, more deaths. Unnecessary deaths. So we are actually pleading with the community at this point for help. Help for our patients, help for your neighbors, help for the healthcare workers who are working tirelessly to fight this pandemic. We have got to practice social distancing. We have got to wear masks, and we have got to avoid large gatherings. It's one of the first lines of defense in flattening this curve to be able to allow the healthcare system to provide care to those people who need it acutely for non-COVID issues. So each of us has a responsibility to do our part. What precautions we do not follow today will determine what our county looks like tomorrow. I don't know what measures can be taken, but coming from a healthcare professional and living through this for the last year, we're asking for some sort of assistance from the council, from the municipalities, from the community. Healthcare needs a break. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can along the lines of what is going on in the hospital. With that said, thank you very much for the time tonight.
Thank you, Justin. Does anybody on the council have any questions at this time?
What is the capacity that the Lawrence County Hospital is at right now? Are we close to or full capacity right now?
I can tell you that we're running 133% capacity. Capacity numbers are, depends on who's reporting them. It can be licensed beds or staff beds. From our staff beds perspective, last report this morning, we were 133%.
All right, are there any others? I'll just say, I know, I see the mayor in the audience, and I know that the Clinton mayor and others are working together currently to, for a community voice and some future statements that we all do want to pull together and do our part. One thing I don't hear mentioned enough personally is hand hygiene. Everybody talks about wearing masks and social distancing, but I watch them go in the grocery store and exchange money and touch the counter. On the way to their car, they scratch their nose through their mask, but they just put whatever's on that counter in their mask. I think hand hygiene will be another big point. We should probably push on for folks that are trying to combat this virus. But Justin, I appreciate your time. I know you gotta get back to the hospital. Y'all got a lot going on, but thanks for taking the time out of your day to come speak to us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if you have any questions, council has any questions of me, I don't want to take a whole lot of time tonight on COVID. I think that's pretty good impact there.
No, only question I have, and then I'll turn it over to other council members. There's been questions from the public over vaccine disbursements. Could you briefly tell us how that's being handled here in Lawrence?
Okay, presently we're in phase 1A, and we're getting all the healthcare workers, first responders. We've had a good turnout of first responders that have gotten the first shot. And we still have some that's trickling in that have changed their mind. So we'll get those folks submitted, and hopefully by the end of the month, we'll have all of our first responders that want to take it with their first shot. And then after they get that first shot, 21 days from that, they'll get the second shot. We as a county do not receive the vaccine. We have partnered with Justin and Prisma, and they have been the ones that have been given the vaccines to the first responder. They have a well-oiled machine out there in doing that. It's very organized. And once you get that vaccine, you got to sit there for about 15 minutes just to make sure that that you have no side effects. So they observe you for a little bit. I haven't heard of any major side effects, maybe like a headache or something like that. Low-grade fever, but nothing to prevent you from taking that vaccine if you get a chance to. I sent out an email today to all the department heads, and I'm going to send it out to the rest of the folks because they got drawn away from the office. DHEC will go online tomorrow morning and register people to take the vaccine if you're 70 years or older, okay? Also, Ingalls and Lawrence, you're able to sign up to get the vaccine there also, if you're 70 or older. That's the priority right now. 1B that everyone else is looking for is going to be on down the road a little ways and get the 70 plus age, get their vaccines, get the first responders, the healthcare, the frontline workers, get those vaccinated, and then there'll be vaccine left over for 1B. Don't know when that's going to take place. We'll wait for them to make that announcement. We are making preparations in the county to go ahead and get our database put together for individuals that want that. So when the time comes, we'll be able to just send it on seamlessly and hopefully get ahead of the ball game a little bit by doing that, by being proactive. I'm not sure if there's any questions about maybe our EMS folks giving vaccines and those kind of things. We've sort of shied away from that at this point in time. For a simple reason is Matt and those are running so hard. He doesn't have the ability to take staff off to give vaccines. But there will be some other clinics open in the near future. I was on a phone call today, so they're working those logistics out. So we hope to see more and more clinics offering that vaccine to the individuals that need it. Okay.
Any other questions from members of the council?
It's a telephone number too. You can also call to starting tomorrow. I think you need to pay attention to Channel 4, and I think Channel 4 gave it out this afternoon at the noon time, and they probably would have it on the 6 o'clock news and maybe the 11 o'clock news tonight for those persons who do not have a computer, so they could go in the morning and start on the computer with signing in. But it's, you just making an appointment, and they'll tell you where you can go, but it's just for only appointments. Not telling you you're gonna get there.
Yes, ma'am. And I'd like to urge people to make those phone calls, to be extremely patient, and keep trying. If you're not able to get through, keep trying. That's the key, is don't give up. Keep trying and pushing to get that vaccine. Okay?
All right, thank you, Joey. I appreciate you and all your team's hard work. Next, we'll have Sheffield Orange County Water Sewer Commission. Well, he's on his way up here. I didn't see him earlier, but I want to recognize Representative Stuart Jones, who's in the audience with us this evening as well. Thank you. And y'all had y'all's first day today, didn't you?
We did.
Good, and we appreciate your hard work in Columbia. Jeff, thank you for joining us.
Yes, sir.
You want me just to do it?
You gonna change the slides for me?
I can do it, just give me a nod.
Got my own copy just in case I have a hard time seeing things, the older you get, the harder it is. So good evening. You don't mind if I take this down when I talk. So thank y'all for having me this evening. I appreciate that very much. Haven't had an opportunity to do this very often, but always great to do it when we're asked. Thank you, John, for asking me to do this. I've got a lot of slides. There's not really a good way to go through projects that we do just by, talking and giving you numbers, because it's a lot of information. So I'll apologize up front. I asked John how long did I have to speak. He said 15 minutes or so. So I've got 20 slides. We'll see if we can hang in there 15 minutes. So we'll do our best. I think I'll have a lot to cover tonight. So with that, we'll get started. Good, I can see the screen, so I won't need my glasses. So I know a lot of people in the community is very familiar with our water treatment plant project, our water treatment facility project on Lake Greenwood. This has been talked about for a long, long time. We actually implemented a rate plan to pay for this, a 5-year rate plan 7 years ago. So that rate plan has already passed and been implemented. So everything I'm about to talk about has been paid for, which is a good thing. But this project is very important for the future of our organization and the future of Orange County. We're grateful for the partnership that we share with council and the municipalities in the county. And so this kind of fits in line with that mission and that goal. So it's a 4 million gallon per day treatment facility. You can see it there down on Lake Greenwood. If you drive into Greenwood on Highway 221, right before you get to 72, where Lee Brothers Barbecue is, you can kind of see our construction site there on your left. And I've got a picture of that to kind of show you where it is as of today. Our intake's actually on the lake. If you continue on and go across down to the Baptist Association Disciples Trail, you'll see our drive down to our intake site there on Lake Greenwood. It's a 4 million gallon per day treatment facility. It can be expanded up to 6, pretty much without expense. We have to do a study to prove to DHEC we can treat 6. So we like to say it's really a 6 million gallon per day facility. And the site can accommodate 2 more treatment trains. So the site can accommodate 18 million gallons per day. Our intake is 9 million gallons per day, and it can be doubled to also treat 18. So we have a permit from the state to withdraw up to 21 million gallons per day out of Lake Greenwood. So plenty of capacity, can sustain us well into the future. So, but to be able to get that water into the community, into the county, we had to install a lot of infrastructure. You can see here, 23.5 miles of 16-inch ductile iron pipe. So that's the 2 lines that run up Highway 221 and 72, basically towards Clinton and Lawrence, kind of get to the center of our system, so then we can take it and distribute it to the rest of the county, most of the county. Kind of difficult to pump it all the way up to Fountain Inn, but we do have plans to kind of slowly work that direction over time. We also had to get a line to connect down to Joanna. Joanna kind of sticks out there on its own. So we've got 8 miles of pipe to kind of connect the system to Joanna. We have a little over 2 miles of raw water line, 24-inch raw water line. We did most of that in private right of way. We got enough right of way to double that line. So we can come back and lay another 24-inch line right beside it. So we think we planned pretty well, did the best we can, but not let the project get too expensive. And as you're about to see, it's not an inexpensive project. It's a very worthwhile project, but also very costly. We also have a 500,000 gallon storage tank we had to add on Highway 72. That's just now coming out of the ground, so you'll start to see that here soon. And then 2 booster stations. One is a very large station in Waterloo, right behind the county's fire department. That pumps a lot of water up to our Raider Road pump station there behind the high school, which then pumps it out to Hickory Tavern and everything else on the western side of the county. The other pump stations are rather small. They're up there. They'll actually be underneath our new elevated tank. One will pump to the hospital tank to keep that tank full. The other one, if needed, will pump to Joanna, mainly in a fire scenario with Norboard, but we can gravity feed Joanna off our line on Highway 72. So I will get quicker. Just want to kind of lay the groundwork here so you kind of get a good feel for everything. So total project cost, as I said, $54 million, just over $54 million. We're starting to finish out some of these projects. They are coming in under budget. So we're having some change orders to deduct some money off of each one of these projects. So all said and done, it may come in $500,000 less than that. Not substantially under budget, but you just don't want to come over budget, right? And so this project is being paid for through a USDA loan. You can see here $42.6 million through a 1.5% loan. We actually have already closed on that loan. We did that 2 months ago to take advantage of the market so we could get 1.5%. We had planned on in our budgeting to be a little over 2.5%. So we came in really good there. We did receive a grant from USDA, which we could have received more, but it took all we could to get that $5 million in grant funding. We also received a little over $3 million in EDA grant funding, $500,000 from the State Rural Infrastructure Authority, and then we've contributed $3 million to the project. Really over time, we've kind of already contributed that through engineering and land acquisitions, through studies, things of that nature to the project. So you saw beforehand a picture of the rendering. This is what the building looks like as of today. So it is moving along. It is going to be finished sometime October, September range. Hopefully be producing water in November into the county. It is on schedule, slightly ahead of schedule. Most all of our line work has been finished. We've got a little bit on 221 from Waterloo down to the site, and the raw water line's about to start construction any week now, any day now, to be honest with you. But all the other line work that I'm going to talk about is pretty much finished, and this project is in the dry, pretty much, which means we are not at the mercy of Mother Nature, which we were a little bit last year when we got started. It rained a lot last winter, and we were nervous about getting behind, and then COVID hit, which also made us nervous about impacting construction schedules. But we were very fortunate that we really only had to shut down 2 weeks for COVID, and it happened around July 4th. And most of the crews were taking that time off anyway, so it kind of worked out for us, if you will. Already talked about the details for our size. It is an upflow clarifier type treatment process. I will not get into the mechanics of that. We have 2 ground storage tanks, and it has ozone treatment, which is rather new technology for the state of South Carolina. They do a lot of it in Florida and Texas. Ozone is really good at treating taste and odor. You've probably read in the paper about Anderson and Clemson and that whole area dealing with significant taste and odor issues, really significant taste and odor issues. They installed a very large ozone treatment facility on that plant, eliminated taste and odor problems. So taste and odor comes from just naturally occurring stuff in our reservoirs. It's really something you can't avoid. It's very difficult to treat. And so we're hopeful with this process with ozone that we can almost eliminate taste and odor issues with our drinking water. So this is some recent shots too, not today. We didn't get up in a drone or a plane and take those shots today, but they're relatively soon. If you were able to attend our groundbreaking, you see there on the left, that cleared site with the silt fence, the double silt fence, that's where we had our groundbreaking. You can see there on the bottom right-hand corner, that's our raw water intake structure now. There'll be a seawall, there'll be other things. We're getting close to being finished with that, but everything inside that building is there, pumps included. Next slide. And so this is the a little bit of a timeline, if you will, of the actual treatment plant site. You see our you see there on the bottom left, sort of the graded site. You see our 2 large clear wells. You see there the infrastructure. It's really a small footprint, which is why we chose this technology, and allows us to move to the left of the screen or to the top of the screen to double that treatment facility 2 more times over and build more ground storage. Off in the far right is the sludge lagoons, but that's pretty much the site. Here's our line work. I've already kind of touched on it. You can see the line of Joanna was a 2.9, almost 3 million portion of the project. It is in service. It is finished. Next up. This is the Highway 72 line, a little over $6 million. We actually didn't plan on doing all the way to Milam Road, but when we got our bids, they were under budget. They were so good and hadn't really seen prices that competitive in a long, long time. We went ahead and executed a change order to go all the way to Milam Road. And so that line is in service. Next slide. 221 halfway finished here, all the way down to the new way in Waterloo. We are testing that portion now to put it in service. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we're going to set a fire vault there for the fire station by the same contractors. All that's hopefully going to start taking place in the next week, and the rest of it will be finished probably within 6 months, not sooner. Stagecoach Road, this allows us to take the water from this and, as I say, get it to Raider Road. We're finished with that project. It's in service, a little over almost 2.25. It actually came in under budget. It's under 2.2 million. And I've not touched on where all the grant funding has been allocated, just to save time. This is our $500,000 Milam Road elevated tank. That picture was taken today. So it is starting to go up. They fabricate this in Indiana and bring it in large pieces and then weld it together and raise it up. Of course, it's not going to be green. That's unpainted prime metal. So, but it is going up as we speak. Will probably be up. I was told in a call earlier this week, it will be up and painting beginning 3rd week of February. So it goes up pretty quick. We have 2 pump stations, as I said earlier, 2 booster stations. They won't be, if you're familiar with our brick and mortar station behind the high school, it's a rather large pump station. They will not look like these. These come in on skids, very efficient. They're actually built with all the equipment and everything internal. And they come in, you hook the pipe up, you'll have a generator on it, and they will be installed as soon as that tank gets up and those guys get out of the way, because one of these is on that site. These guys are ready to come in and drop these pump stations. So that's the water plant project. And big project takes up a lot of our time. I'm going to run through some other things that we're doing in the county as well, just for information. So you're familiar with the Connectional Industrial Park. This project is pretty much finished, a little over almost about 2.26 million. This is a water and sewer project. The sewer infrastructure is mainly dedicated to the industrial park. We will take Country Fresh, which is an industry on Friendship Church Road, turn it around and gravity feed into this system. A lot of capacity there to serve the industrial park and any residential growth that kind of comes around this industrial park. Also had to put in a water line to kind of help boost up fire protection. We ran that water line on Frontage Road. You can see there 8 fire hydrants, a lot of fire hydrants as part of this project. So hopefully we can continue to expand fire service in the county as a part of these projects. We also have a Rural Infrastructure Authority project up near Fountain Inn, and it's kind of hard to tell from this map. This is 418 from Scuffletown Road up to Bethany. We have an elevated tank up there, 250,000 gallon elevated tank. We're running a 12-inch line. Right now it's a 6-inch line. There's a lot of residential growth, obviously coming to Lawrence County, Gray Court North. This line will allow us to get water off Scuffletown, where we already have water coming in from Greenville County, to that tank quicker to support that growth over the next however long it's going to continue to flow into the county. Hickory Tavern tank, y'all should be familiar with this. This was approved as part of the capital sales tax project. This is the existing tank. It's undersized at about 100, I think it's 150,000 gallons. More importantly, it's too short. This tank was built back in the early 70s when we were formed in 1972, not exactly the exact, wasn't built in 1972, Vic, but it was built in the late 70s, one of our original tanks. Our system has now outgrown this system hydraulically. We have a pump at the base of it that kind of makes the water flow in and out of that tank. It's not a good way to run a elevated storage tank. They're meant to be done by gravity. That's an efficient way and reliable way to do it. We've evaluated jacking this tank up. It costs as much to jack it up almost as it is to build one. And it's really undersized. What you see there at the right is some different things that we do internally, how we track usage per meter. Right now, this tank has a very small footprint on what it can serve. Does not help at all in fire protection. It's just there really as kind of an emergency, if you will. We had a massive fire maybe nearby. Being able to come in and build a tank, 250,000 gallons, and at the elevation of all of our tanks around it, allows it to operate by gravity, allows it to kind of operate in tandem with these other tanks and benefit a lot more people, increase fire protection, and honestly allow us to at some point get water from our Lake Greenwood facility farther up Fairview Road. There'll be some line work associated with this tank to also improve fire protection, but really, really good project. We're thankful the voters supported this project. Thank y'all for allowing us to do that. And the next project, getting close. So CDBG Projects, Community Development Block Grant, another type of system or project that we partner with the county. Y'all support us in these projects, and we really, really appreciate it. Most of them or all of them are really for low income type communities. Or below medium household income type communities. So most of what you see, we use these funds to rehab our sewer system. In Joanna, in Lydia Mills, very hard to do rehab right now. It's costly. If you can avoid rate increases to do that type of rehab using these grants, we do them. We get them almost every year. What you see here is the project we just finished up in Lydia Mills, 814,000. We contributed 122 to it, mainly engineering because the grants doesn't include engineering. That's not all engineering, but this allowed us to finish rehab for the entire Lydia Mills community. So that system has basically been renewed. We've done 5 in Joanna. We'll do more in Joanna. I'll touch on those in a minute. Highway 56 and 76, we're replacing more rehab here. This is a CDBG project for the city of Clinton, if you will. This is about to get started. This is the one we just got approved for. They're really small in scale projects, but huge in benefit. So we've got 2 road crossings, one on Highway 56, which is sort of small, and one down there on 76, Railroad and the 4-lane. Almost 2/3 of the flow in Clinton go through these 2, well, goes through the one on 76, not that much on the one up on 56. These lines are 40 years old. They have slowly decayed, very expensive. Our goal was to line them, just go in there and slip line them, rehab them, be done. We were going to do it out of our budget. We had about $100,000 budget for that. We started TVing these lines, having contractors come in to give us quotes. They said, I can't touch that line. If I try to slip line it, it could fall apart. And so we started getting quotes to replace it. $800,000, $750,000. So instead of affecting our budget, we delayed that project about 6 months, went after a CDBG grant, was awarded that grant. And so we're about to start that project really with the same out of pocket we planned on at $105,000. We got more CDBG projects. We're going to do an upgrade at a treatment plant for our sludge handling. It's really outdated. We've got another Joanna project identified here. I won't go into details of that, but 2 more CDBG projects. We are constantly evaluating what type of projects we need to do. And we really do it based off where the demand is and obviously with what type of funding we can qualify for. So no particular order here, but we've got a lot of, we've got an elevated tank on Metric Road, $500,000. We'd like to get a 16-inch line one day up Highway 14 all the way to Gray Fork. We'd like to finish a bottleneck on 221 and a bottleneck on Green Pond. These are areas where we see a lot of growth. Obviously, this says 5 to 10 years. We'll do it as funding is available and as we refine those plans. From a sewer standpoint, this is water. I think should have one more slide. Sewer. These are more smaller scale projects, and I'm going to wrap up with some general discussion about that. But these are just upgrades to existing infrastructure, mainly in the upper part of the county, Gray Court North, where we're trying to get set up to be able to handle all the residential growth that we see. There's a lot of subdivision, a lot of developers looking up there. I know they've been before the Planning Commission, but I get calls almost weekly looking at maps of our infrastructure, where our water is, where our sewer is. And so we're trying to kind of stay ahead of that and upsize some of the existing infrastructure to handle that growth. This is kind of what we've laid out to look at probably over the next couple of years. Sewer is a little bit more challenging to fund. It's just, we don't have a huge customer base there. That's not usually the norm for a rural community. So we have to go after grants and other funding for a lot of this kind of stuff. So And then John asked me when he said, hey, come talk to us about projects and issues. And I'm like, I don't really have a whole lot of issues other than COVID right now, like the rest of us. But we do have some things that we would probably over time need a lot of support on. I mean, this is not going to be new to anybody up here or anybody in this room. Probably more than our treatment plant. I mean, we get a lot of questions about our water plant right now, but I've always got a ton of questions about why do we not have more sewer in the county? Why is there not sewer here and there? And sewer is just not really cost effective for a rural county. When you start to explain that to folks and say, look, for public sewer to work, you got to have 1/3 of an acre lots. You got to have subdivisions that you're used to seeing up around Simpsonville and that kind of thing. And so there's just not typically been a demand like that in the county. Now, up around the Fountain Inn, around Lawrence and Clinton, you might see that demand, but out in Hickory Tavern, you know, around Gray Court even, you've just not typically seen that kind of demand where people want to stack houses and condominiums on top. We're starting to see that. I mean, quick. It almost happened overnight. And it's not just Lawrence County. I mean, it's spilling over to Woodruff, you name it. So there's a lot of work to be put into infrastructure in Lawrence County, where it needs to go, where is it cost effective, how do we pay for it? And that kind of dovetails into what other groups like Lawrence County Council and other groups are doing as far as planning. You know, where do we see this growth? How are we going to accommodate it from a road standpoint? You know, John and I have talked about road infrastructure. There's just a lot of effort, joint effort, that we need to be talking about as far as how to accommodate growth. We'll obviously try to work hard on trying to provide the water and sewer to that with y'all support, which we greatly appreciate. So that's a big topic. I'm not going to go any farther than that right now. Lake Greenwood, near and dear to our heart right now, if it ever was. That's our future water source for the county. So anything that you guys can do to support and protect that lake, partner with Greenwood County, it's all going to benefit that water source, which is going to benefit the residents of Lawrence County. So, you know, and y'all done that. Not saying you need to do any of this. I'm just kind of keeping it out there on the radar. So I appreciate everything that y'all done in that regard. So that's a lot. I don't have my watch up here. I don't know if I stayed under 15 minutes or 20. I did my best. Any questions?
Are there any questions from council members?
It's a lot, and y'all can call me. I know if anybody has any questions in detail that we don't cover tonight, feel free to call me.
That industrial sewer portion that you did around Connexio, could that be part of the future residential?
It
Tie
is.
in for the future residential?
Yeah, so two things before that project was even put into service. We upsized the pump before they went into service by doing some changes in the pump. We replaced the force main that it was going to use. It was a 4-inch force main. We've already replaced half of it with a 6. We're in that list is taking it and replacing it all the way up to Reedy Creek Road, where it can manifold into a 10-inch force main. So yes, we've actually, I want to say, almost tripled the capacity of that pump station before it ever went into service, because we're seeing the residential growth coming in right around it. And we had money in the budget. It came in under budget. We were able to take advantage of that.
Don't have a question, just want to say thank you for all you're doing, and just want to highlight the 1.5% APR on that loan. Well done on getting that.
Yeah, so when I heard about it, I said, we're closing right now. So, because right now we're sort of double paying. We're paying the loan and still buying water. So we're kind of holding the water, so to speak, in our business for the next 8 months until this plant goes on, or 10 months till this plant goes online. So yeah, but it was worth it at that kind of savings. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I know you said in the rural communities, it's not exactly feasible to run sewer line through just because of lack of residency. But as we're developing these projects, is it possible to tie in smaller areas like Bridgeport as we're doing these projects?
Yeah, we are everywhere that we can expand our system to get every sort of drop out of it. We're doing that in that list of projects. And right now we're trying to work with some funding agencies and partners to kind of do that over the next really 12 to 18 months. Beyond that, you're talking some pretty significant improvements to get back to either a rewash treatment plant outside of Fountain Inn, or we look at doing something on our own. But yeah, it's getting there. And the reason it's so difficult is unlike water, sewer is more expensive than water because it's pretty much installed on grade, so it can cost twice to 3 times as much as water on occasion. You just don't know if the customers are going to come and use it. You can put a water line down a road where there's a lot of houses, and by and large, you're going to slowly get most of those customers to tap on. But until that density comes in there, folks are going to stay on their septic tank or put in a septic tank. So it's a tough thing to kind of balance the cost. It's not usually revenue driven upfront. Down the road, you get enough growth, convert to a revenue type arrangement, if you will. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Jeff, thank you. We appreciate you coming, and you're underappreciated. People don't realize how important the infrastructure planning is for the businesses, industries, and developers for homes to come into this area. So we appreciate your foresight and all you do for this county.
But I appreciate that and appreciate all the support. We couldn't do it without y'all's help. Very much so. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to point out a couple of quick things. There is an ordinance that we've been working with in partnership with Greenwood County on the lake area in particular, but this will be something countywide, looking at sedimentation. Sedimentation is a problem. This goes into the raw water intakes. There may be something in the future. There's nothing in the works just yet, but there may be something in the future also to take a look at failing septic systems around the lake that may be contaminating the lake and therefore potentially contaminating the water source. So keep an eye on those two things. The sediment ordinance is currently, Sandy's working with Chuck on that ordinance. We'll go through the planning commission. May come back to county council in the next several months. And then in the future, nothing currently in the works, we may be dealing with the septic issue around the lake also.
Thank you.
Yeah, give me an hour. We can talk about a lot. So,
Thank you, Jeff.
all right, thank y'all. Y'all have a good evening.
Next, we have Ms. Brent Davis of Malden and Jenkins to talk to us about our fiscal 1920 audit. 2019-2020 audit.
Well, I appreciate y'all having me. I'll try to do my best to be as interesting as the past two presentations, but I doubt it. But anyway, I'm gonna go through some highlights here of the financial statements. I hope you have copies of them in front of you. If you don't, then, and you have questions later, then feel free to reach out to me and be happy to try to address those. Just a few things to note here at the beginning of the presentation. We've issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements of the county. That's the best such opinion you can give in a financial statement audit, which is what you want. In fact, anything less than that is really unacceptable. So again, an unmodified opinion doesn't sound great, but that's where we need to be. There's also a section in the financial statements that I think I've mentioned before in these presentations. It's called the management's discussion and analysis. I would suggest that if you read one part of the document, it's about 90 pages long. The whole document's about 90 pages long. If you read one part, I would suggest the 7 or 8 pages that are in the management's discussion and analysis. It provides analysis both for the fiscal year into 2020 that we had audited as compared to 2019. And then there's a brief look forward into the 2021 year we're in now and that budget, and then some maybe longer term economic impacts to think about there. But anyway, like I said, I'm going to mention just some page numbers and give you some brief highlights. And if at any time you have a question, just interrupt me and I'll do my best to answer those. But anyway, just beginning on page 12, there's called the statement of net position, which is essentially the balance sheet for the county as a whole. Total assets in the county of about almost $89 million. Of that, about 72% is capital assets. These things like infrastructure, equipment, things of that nature, and that's about 64 million, or again, about 72% of the total assets number. Cash, both unrestricted and restricted cash, is about 18.5 million. That's about 21% of your total assets. And then investments, both restricted and unrestricted, right at about 3 million, or 3% of your total assets number. So again, about 96% of the assets of the county are cash, investments, and capital, which is not atypical. Total liabilities of the county, $61.6 million. Of that, about 4.7 is what we call current liabilities, so things due within 1 year. This would be things like accrued payroll, accounts payable, the current portion of long-term debt, like the debt service payments that would be due within a year from the balance sheet date on the outstanding bonds and capital leases. Again, that's about $4.7 million. The net pension liability, which is comprised of the South Carolina and police retirement systems, Those two plans, the total liability is about $27.7 million. And again, that's just the county's proportionate share of the greater pension liability that PIBA administers. And there's, I think I've mentioned this in the past, there's nothing you can do to offset that liability or to reduce it in any way, other than have fewer employees. Total OPEB liability, and when I say OPEB, I'm referring to other post-employment benefits. This is in the form of retiree health insurance for certain eligible retirees in the county. $16.5 million is the amount of that liability. That's about 27% of that total 61 million that I referred to earlier, and then other long-term obligations in the form of general obligation bonds and capital leases, right at about $12.5 million, or 20% of your total liability. So the vast portion or portions of your total liabilities for the county as a whole are the net pension liability, which again you have no control over, the total other post-employment benefits liability, which is actuarially determined based on a number of factors, at about 27%, and then long-term debt, geo bonds, capital leases at about 12.5 million. Last thing I'll mention on this statement, net position or equity of the county at right at about $30 million. That's a decrease from 2019 to 2020 of close to $2 million. The largest portion of your equity is what's called invested in capital assets, and the way that's calculated is to take the total capital assets, which were referred to before, and subtract any debt that's outstanding to purchase or acquire those capital assets. So that's, again, the most significant portion of your equity is tied up in capital assets. Another portion is restricted at right at about $7 million. These are things that are restricted for capital outlay, debt service, both by council and for outside parties or state law. That's about 23% of net position. And then unrestricted is a deficit $37.6 million. It's a negative number. And that looks bad, but if you consider your net pension liability, which again, you have no control over at 27 million, and then your total other post-employment benefits liability at about 16.5 million. Those two liabilities make up the bulk of that deficit. That's why that's there. If those liabilities weren't there, you wouldn't have a negative unrestricted net position. And the standards that require the quantification of those liabilities came out, and the pension standard was in 2015. The OPEB standard was in 2018. So they're both relatively new on a longer term scale. So for some historical analysis, you could potentially look back at past years, add those numbers back to get a more correct idea of where your unrestricted net position is. But again, I just wanted to highlight it. Next thing I'll refer to here is on page 15. This is the balance sheet for the governmental type funds, which is essentially all the funds of the county except the solid waste fund, which is an enterprise or business type fund. So highlights here, just a few from the general fund. General fund reports assets of about $19.1 million. Of that total, about 85% is cash, right at about $16.3 million. So that's an extremely liquid general fund. Talk about this a little bit later, but the general fund had expenditures this past year of right at about $24.5 million. So if we take that as a monthly total, the general fund spends right over $2 million a month. So if we look at that compared to the cash balance you have, that represents about 8 months of cash on hand at June 30. So your property tax billings go out in the fall. They are substantially collected either by December or at least through February. So you're in a very lean time from a fiscal perspective at June 30. So to have 8 months of cash in your general fund to take you from June 30 on around to where property taxes are collected, which are your most significant revenue, is an excellent place to be, especially in light of COVID. And that only really impacted the last quarter of this fiscal year, but very little in terms of financial impact as far as I can tell based on fiscal year 20. Now, what that looks like as we move into 21, I guess we'll see as we continue to go. But again, not much financial impact associated with COVID and revenues at this point through June 30 anyway. A few other things here. The general fund has liabilities of about $8 million. Of that, about $7 million is owed to other funds of the county. So the general fund sort of acts as a a bank, so to speak, to other funds. It gives money to these funds, and we record a payable and a receivable back into to net to zero among all those activities. So again, about 6.9 of that 8 million is owed to other funds of the county. That all gives us fund balance or equity of almost $10.5 million, and an unassigned fund balance is 93%, which is essentially available to be spent. It's not restricted or assigned by any outside party or council itself. And again, that's right. That number is about 5.1 months, just over 5 months of your expenditures. So again, $2 million a month, $10 million in fund balance, 9.8 in unassigned, 5 months of fund balance on hand. So again, that's getting you all the way through to property tax collections, essentially. Just a few more things here. Page 16, the income statement for the governmental funds. General fund had revenues of about $25.3 million. About 65% of that is property taxes at about $16.2 million. General fund had expenditures, like I mentioned earlier, about $24.4 million. And again, that's about $2 million a month. The general fund had an increase in its fund balance or equity this year of about $1 million. Some interesting things, just as we look at the budget, which begins on page 18 and goes through page 20, the general fund budgeted for about $24.5 million in revenues and recognized almost 25.5. So almost a $1 million positive revenue variance in the general fund. And then as we look at the expenditures, excuse me, general fund budgeted expenditures of about $24.8 million and recognized 24.4. So we over collected and underspent. So an overall positive budget variance in the general fund, about $1.2 million to the good there, which is again, probably some COVID driven, just to be honest. There were probably some cutbacks here and there just in anticipation of the impact. But again, those are not only a great place to be for a positive expenditure variance, but a positive revenue variance that you collected more than was anticipated. Last couple things I'll mention here. Page 21 begins the financial statements of the solid waste fund. It's an enterprise or business type fund, and just a few things here to note. It had assets of about $1.1 million. 93% of that's capital assets, infrastructure, equipment of the solid waste activities. It had liabilities of about $1.2 million. 75% of that is its portion of the county's overall pension liability. So not a current liability, not something that's going to be paid out really ever for that matter. But its portion will be recognized through contributions with the general fund and other funds of the county. But anyway, about 75% of the total liabilities is pension. Net position is sort of a small 73,000 in light of the other numbers that we've talked about, but come a long way from past years, and I'll talk about that here. If you look with me on page 22, solid waste and operating revenues about $2.3 million. That's a slight decrease from 2019, about a 2% decrease from fiscal year 19. But operating expenses were about $1.8 million. That's a 17% decrease from 2019. So revenues were down slightly, but expenditures were down significantly. About 3% of the total expenses of the solid waste activities are depreciation, so very small, but as additional infrastructure is added and capitalized, there will be more depreciation expense. That will be something to consider in its equity position there. But the most important statement for any business is a statement of cash flows. You can find that on page 23, and since solid waste operates like a business, it's important to look at those. And while it does not record any significant cash in and of itself, it did generate cash from its operations of about $820,000 this past year. And it immediately spent all of that on capital activities, which is, that's what it's there to do. Not to sustain other operations of the county, but to sustain itself and continue to reinvest in its infrastructure. Last couple things, pages 25 through 62 are all the footnotes associated with financial statements. I will not go through all those unless you have specific questions about any of them. Pages 63 through 73 are various types of supplementary information. combining statements for various small funds, some pension information that provides some historical analysis on that liability and how it's just gone up and down for the last 7 or 8 years now. Then on pages 74 and 75, we've issued 2 reports in this, in the financial statements. The first one I mentioned at the very beginning, which was our opinion on the financial statements. This report is what we call our yellow book report, or our report on internal controls over compliance. This report just goes to say that we, as a part of our audit, we designed it to test instances of compliance with grant agreements, laws, and regulations. As a result of our audit, we didn't notice any instances of non-compliance that would be material to the financial statements and thus be required to report to you all. So not a report designed to offer an opinion, but to give negative assurance essentially that we didn't notice anything as a part of our audit that would raise concern with the non-compliance. Page 76 is just sort of an audit recap and just goes to say that there are no findings, which would be in the form of either non-compliance or internal control, material weaknesses, or significant deficiencies. This is the second consecutive year that we have not had any internal control issues to report to you all. So that's just a testament to the great job that management and Lisa and the finance department have done to clear up those items. We also issued a management letter. There are a few recommendations in that letter. They're simply recommendations. They are not indicative of control breakdowns or deficiencies in any matter, but just again, recommendations that we have for improvement in certain areas. The only other thing I'll say, we did start about 5 weeks later than we have historically to begin the audit. We usually begin in September, about 3rd week of September. I think we started either the last week in October or the 1st week in November. I can't remember now. And that was due to COVID for the most part, as far as I can tell. But just want to say how good of a job everybody did at the county, helping us, especially Lisa, in getting this done by December 31st, which of course is the deadline. Significant effort to do that in a shorter time frame than is normal. So just want to congratulate her and thank all of you for helping us do that. So any questions from anybody?
Any questions from Mr. Davis? Thank you. I know it's not an easy job or a fun one for that matter, but we appreciate y'all checking our books and we're thankful for the good report.
Sure. Fun for me.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty, next up, we have an update on the Church Street office building, and I believe that's Billy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last month in our December meeting, we talked about upgrades to Church Street in order to move PPP over there. We were looking at some funding from the state level. Got word that due to shortfalls from COVID and other things, that money will not be available to us. We are asked to reapply July 1 to do that, to hopefully get approval again. But in order, we've done a walkthrough over there this afternoon and looking at about $110,000, what we actually need to get the building up and ready for a move in. There's electrical, there's plumbing fixtures. There is, we identified a third of the windows, 17 windows are either cracked or have been leaking. And we are getting prices on those windows right now. I met the guy over there this afternoon to take measurements and stuff, but looking at about $110,000, and that will get the building ready to move in for PPP. So, that's where we're at. Be glad to answer any questions or anything else.
Billy, for the 2 new council members in particular, would you just briefly explain the plans for PPP and why we're doing it?
PPP was, we were asked to find the solicitor's offices where it started, more room for them. So PPP naturally could go right over to Church Street, have their own building, have their own access, and be in their own space over there. And then we could take the empty space at Hillcrest and widen out the solicitor's offices and give them some extra room over there that they desperately need. They're on top of one another. So that's how we came to be with it. Church Street, when we vacated about 4 or 5 years ago, we've got new HVAC, we've got new roofing, flooring has been done, LED lighting has been done, outside LED lighting has been done. So all of that was kind of done, and then we got on information that we could hopefully get some money from Columbia. We were asked to submit what all we needed to make the building top notch. Come up with $238,000. And we submitted that, and it looked good until COVID. And then it went out the window with everything else. Don't know whether we could be approved for it again, because COVID is certainly, we're going into 21 just like we come out of 20. So whether we could get it later on this year, I don't know. He said it was worth applying for, and we will definitely do that. But in order to get this done and off the ground and get PPP over there, is about $110,000 and probably 6-7 months worth of work after we, bid things out and stuff like that. So.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, next up is John King with the capital plan update.
Thank you, council. This is a lot to digest, but a good start to 2021. You've heard some great information on our finances and some good information on the water and sewer. This is the fourth annual capital improvement plan. We've updated this every year. It's, again, the fourth year we're doing this. A lot of this is just repeat. I'm just going to go through some of this real quick. Overall, we identified almost $250 million in long-term capital needs. Again, this is a long-term vision. It says 10 years, but we're talking well beyond 10 years. A lot of that $250 million is maybe more of of wants than needs, such as, at some point in the future, a library in the Hickory Tavern area, I know is included. But again, it's just a look into the future, as well as a look at what needs to be done now when we started on this journey 4 years ago. You can see there the numbers. I'm not going to go into these. It's basically broken into what we need to do now. And the reason I do this now, I normally do this in December because it's more of an off time before the holidays. But with the new council members coming on board, I wanted to make sure we brought you all up to speed. This will build directly into the budget that we're about to start that journey on in probably March or April. So you'll see this $74 million. That'll be something that's in the next fiscal year. And then just looking ahead at the next 5 years and then beyond 5 years. So we've got a lot of things that have been successful. And this is a lot of repeat of what I've already said. There's only a few things that are remaining that have not been addressed. I'm not saying we've addressed all of those $250 million or so in long-term needs, but we've started down a path of addressing every one of our needs that we've identified in our short-term plans, in our 10-year plans, except for these last remaining 4 items. Now, what's not included here is road paving. We did increase the road fee, and we'll get to this in just a little bit, but I don't want you to think that the $40 million liability, which is a significant portion, that $40 million over 10 years would be a $100 million problem. But last year we increased the road fee, actually this year, and that will go to stabilize that problem. So that $40 million problem for road paving, that's not included in here, but really we're down to these 4 items. And I'll just do it the last one first, which is our bridges. We did a bridge analysis. We've had more than half a dozen, a lot of them up in Kemp's district, that have been shut down due to failed bridges. That's actually been a positive to some folks and a lot of folks. We've seen some folks really pleased with the fact that that road is no longer a cut through. They don't have to hear the loud music and the traffic and whatnot. And for the most part, it has not impacted emergency response. So road bridges at this point are something that we can kind of put off to the side. What is remaining though is the emergency services building, the law enforcement center, which also includes the coroner. Some refer to that as the courthouse annex right down the road here, or down the alley, Prisoner Alley. And then I did talk about road pavement. Really, it's there's really the two things. The reason I said three things was emergency services, actually the EMS headquarters, the 911 center, and then you've got the law enforcement center. You can see there for the EMS, the emergency service building, which is EMS headquarters, and the 911 building and the 911 center and emergency operations, that's almost $18 million has been identified by the consultants. And the new LEC coroner's office is north of 15 million. I think those numbers are conservative on the high end. I think those numbers are probably a little bit high. But those two issues there are really all that's remaining, is that $18 million for emergency services and something to do with the LEC. You're going to probably hear again from the sheriff's office that building, it needs more than $1 million worth of work. And I, again, would hate to see us spend money on that old building when we really need to replace it. It's out of space. So this kind of shows you the road patrol vehicles and the sheriff's office vehicles. This is something that we'll be dealing with during the operating budget. We fund this for you new council members with our 6 mills. When I first got here, we were buying, I call them cop cars. We were buying 15 cop cars. And with today's numbers and what it costs to buy cars, we probably wouldn't have been able to afford even 15 every 3 years. And the data indicated that investment of 15 cars over every 3-year period or so, which number one was wiping out all the capital. So all we were able to do was buy the cop cars that fiscal year, was actually not getting us ahead. So what we started doing was a regular vehicle replacement cycle, and also moving into looking at trying to find good used vehicles. And the sheriff's office has been wonderful about continuing to hunt for high quality, lower mileage, good used vehicles, which we can get for significantly less than a new vehicle. And you can see there the numbers. I'm not going to go into the details, but originally we, and road patrol is the ones in particular, we don't want our road patrol vehicles breaking down in pursuit of emergency situations. So they're the ones we want to make sure we've got good vehicles for our road patrol folks. And when we first started, we had road patrol vehicles that were north of 350,000 miles. So, the bad guys were running around town, and they knew if they punched it hard enough, they'd see a cloud of black smoke when our cars tried to keep up with the oil burning. Now, originally we anticipated we would need 23 vehicles in 2023. You can see with our regular replacement schedule, and as well, and very important, we continue to buy used vehicles, we're down to 11. So this plan is working. And this is the other vehicles. There's other vehicles in addition to those. And you can see also 62 vehicles, what was originally anticipated. And now we're down to an anticipated 21 vehicles in 2023. The evidence facility has been just recently a top priority. MS headquarters was a priority of county council when I first got here. This evidence facility, I'm glad to say, was funded by the taxpayers and to the tune of $2 million through the first capital sales tax. So that project is underway, and that facility, which is the old jail right down the road here next to the LEC. However, we still need the LEC to be addressed. 13.5 million is what the consultants came up. Another 1.8 for the coroner. I think those numbers personally are probably a little bit on the high end, if not vastly on the high end. The other thing that we've addressed, and you new council members, even some of y'all who are here now are blessed because previous councils have addressed this in the past 4 to 5 years, is our rolling stock. Our rolling stock on EMS, ambulances in particular, and QRVs, the heart monitors, all that stuff, because we didn't have money, all that stuff was just worn out. And last year, FY20, the one we just heard the audit on, was the first year we actually started 2 mills specifically, it was a new tax, 2 mils specifically for capital. And this just shows you that rather than having these spurts of having to get money in the future, this kind of just levels it all out. And that plan is working really well for the EMS capital. So that problem has pretty much been addressed. The capital sales tax has addressed, which was a #1 priority of county council prior, which was the EMS facility across from the Ridge. That facility also is, it's not only the headquarters. The headquarters is, for if you don't know, is broken into 2 places. One is down by the library down the hill here, and the other one is up on top of the hill across from the Ridge. But then you've also got Medic 1, which is an ambulance station housed there. The capital sales tax is funding that $350,000 to remodel that building across from the Ridge. So that problem is funded and taken care of. What's not taken care of is the headquarters, which they come up with $9.7 million for the headquarters. And then all the substations that are needing to be addressed throughout the county. That number currently is at $8.4 million. So that those last 2 items, headquarters in particular, has not been addressed. Fire is another one, very significant issue. We do have millage set aside for capital for fire. We were looking again at a long-range plan rather than just addressing what we need to do now and in the current fiscal year. And we're hoping that through this, we could continue. Those of you who may not have been around, we actually have this 10-year lease program. You can basically ignore it till 2030 for the most part. But that 10-year lease came up in 2020. It was $3.5 million. A certain amount of millage was already out there being charged to us taxpayers to cover. Replaced a lot of fire trucks and whatnot. However, we still have more fire apparatus that needs to be replaced, about $1.2 million. We're hoping that growth in the county will accommodate that, so we won't need to increase the taxes for covering that $1.2 million in additional fire trucks that are needed. Right now, we put that out there at 2025 to take a good hard look at where we're at, and that's currently the plan. So we're hoping that the growth will keep that any kind of millage increase in check. We do need to continue, and we're going to have a couple agenda items when we finally get to the actual business part of the meeting shortly. We need to continue to monitor the operation and maintenance budget. Right now, it's doing well. It's got a very healthy fund balance. Fire does. It's a special purpose tax district, so it's a separate than the general fund. So things are looking really good, but we do want to keep a long-term look and keep an eye on that operation and maintenance, because it's getting extremely hard to continue to provide this service through volunteers. And that just means we're going to have to put more paid staff on in the future. This just tells us a kind of a long-term look. This is old data. I don't have current data from FY20, the past fiscal year, which was this past summer. So I haven't updated this, but this just lets you know we've got 2 funds. Fund 134 is the capital for fire. 123 is the operation and maintenance. This gives us, and this is actually above, you heard the numbers there that were presented in the audit. They said, well, yeah, he kind of equated it to months of operation. You want to keep at least 3 months of operation and maintenance in your books. So when we get to that 3 months of reserve, some funds are under, but fire has been above. And what you're seeing here is fire actually has more than that 25% reserve. That 25% reserve is basically 3 months. So this is actually extra money, but these 2 funds, the operation and maintenance fund, will actually continue to fund 134. Again, this is just telling us, all you're really getting out of this information is it allows us to continue to keep our eye on the ball ahead, so that whatever actions we take now, whatever actions we take in the next fiscal year, we talk about the budget, we're continuing to make sure we don't get ourselves in a hole in the future. The one area that is of a concern is the solid waste enterprise fund. You heard that solid waste was doing better. The significant decrease, if you paid attention and didn't get lost, there was a significant decrease in solid waste expenses in FY20. That's primarily due to the fact that we now take our trash over to Twin Chimneys at $17 a ton versus the $35, $40 a ton. So that's significantly reduced our expenditures. As you know, we'll have a groundbreaking very soon on the new transfer station. And there should be some additional positive financial impacts of that. But I just want to warn you that we did identify in FY20 that in order to make ends meet back then, we needed a $12 fee increase. And council only increased by $5. Now, things have changed since then, so those numbers are old. But with the new operation of the transfer station, when we get into the budget, we're going to have to take a really good hard look at the solid waste fund. This is one that I continue to be concerned with. There is this old landfill liability. Right now, DHEC says we're supposed to have $1 million on the books to take care of groundwater contamination and methane, and the cap that's on that old landfill was closed in the late 1990s to make sure that we have enough money to take care of that problem. We don't have anything. We have zero set aside for that. I don't see it as a big issue right now. DHEC is not mandating that. They're just saying this is what you're required to have, but there's no push. We got the transfer station. Now, animal control, for you new council members in particular, is now a separate fund. Animal control was in solid waste last year. We pulled it out of solid waste along with the proportional fee for animal control. It's no longer a part of the solid waste enterprise fund. We'll get more in depth on this. This again is a long range vision. And I will be able to tell you when we start talking about this, how much fee increase we're going to need. And I know y'all will say, well, put a zero in there, and I'm going to be able to show you how we're going to be in the hole significantly in the next 10 years. Or if you say, well, let's put $2 in there, even though we need $5, I can show you we'll be less in the hole, but we'll still be in the hole. I got a nice Excel spreadsheet that we'll be able to play around with when we get to that situation. So solid waste, I'm not going to go too much into this, but the transfer station, for those of you who don't know, rather than borrowing from the private sector, because we have enough money now in our general fund, we chose to borrow from ourselves. We did charge an interest on top of that. So this is a separate business unit. And so we borrowed from the general fund. Don't have the exact figures on where we're at, but we built a transfer station. It says 1.5, that was the original budget, but we actually spent less than $1 million on that transfer station. And then we bought $500,000 worth of equipment, so that may be where the 1.5 comes in. There's still additional equipment that's needed. If you've seen our convenience centers, there's a lot of need for improvement on our convenience centers and whatnot. But animal control is shown here. They've also identified capital to the tune of almost $200,000. Now, roads, we did, I talked about the bridges. We did do a feasibility study. This is an old slide. I didn't update it, but that's somewhere around $10 million to fix the current bridges that are out there. We do have a plan in place to address stabilizing the bridges that are still open. We have about a half a dozen or more that look like this one in the middle that have been closed. So far, that doesn't seem to be a problem. It actually seems to be a plus to a lot of those residents that live on those roads. Now, the other thing I want to make sure we clarify, this is not paving, and we may end up having a more detailed discussion again on this, but basically you can see on the left here, yeah, that's on y'all's left too. The cracking in the roads, you can see the one in the middle, it's cracked. That's about a $40 million problem. Now, when people talk about county roads, there are county roads, there are a significant amount of county roads. There's county roads, there's state roads, and then there's private roads, but and even some of our roads out there will be both county and state. It's really weird here in South Carolina the way that system's set up, but we do have $40 million worth of pavement liability that we need to take care of. The only way we pave our roads is through the CTC funding. That's the gas tax money that comes back to us from the state. At that funding level, that $40 million problem will grow to a $100 million problem. So what we have done is last year we did a fee increase, a significant fee increase from $15 a vehicle to $25 a vehicle. And that's allowed us to put additional staff on the road department and to buy what you see here, which is a chip spreader. And we'll start sealing these roads up. So all these cracks you see in these roads, we'll start sealing those roads up. Some of these roads will be perfectly fine. If you've been to some of our country roads and you've seen this tar and gravel that was laid down, maybe 30, even 40 years ago, they're perfectly fine. That old tar and gravel, it sets itself back up. It starts to degrade over a couple of decades, but it sets itself back up in the summertime and all the cracks go away. So tar and gravel works on some lower volume roads. So some of the problem will actually go away, and that $40 million problem will hopefully be less just through us sealing the roads. The rest of it is just to keep that $40 million problem from growing to a $100 million problem. So we haven't addressed the pavement liability, but we've come a long way with the actions that we did in the prior fiscal year. And we'll continue to monitor that in the next couple of years, and then continue to have a long-range plan on how to address our roads in the future. The other big project, which fortunately we're through many phases of, is the Hillcrest multi-phase project. This is a very important the most important government building in the county for the government operations. This may be the first and only impression of folks that come to Lawrence County, maybe to do business with the county, or maybe check on property records on looking at maybe investing here in the county. This is the first and only impression for visitors. It may be the first and only impression for folks that are investing in Lawrence County that come to Lawrence County. And it's a place of pride for our citizens. It's also a place of pride for a significant amount of your employees. The multi-phase project, a lot of it has been done. We've replaced the roof, we've replaced the HVAC systems, we've put in energy efficient lighting. Y'all may not remember, but on the left is what it looked like. It looked great when it was built in the 90s, but it just doesn't look great today. And a lot of that flooring and whatnot needed to be replaced. So we've replaced the men's and women's restroom in the front. You can see on the right there. You come to Lawrence County and you see a rusted, beat up restroom when you come to you. It just doesn't give a good impression that this is a place that is being successful like we are today. You see the new restroom on the right is very important. This has all been done. So it's I'm super proud of the work our team has done on that. And this just goes through the different phases. What hasn't been addressed yet is the next phases. You'll deal with this. I won't get into any details on this, but you'll be dealing with this when we get into the budget. We've been funding this. We funded a lot of this through the bond that was let, the recent bond, about $4 million. So we funded a lot of it through that, but a lot of it is funded through our 6 mills in capital. So you'll see Billy bring back to you some more pieces. If you've been down to building codes is crammed into a small space. They need more space. So there is a need to address that and continue to address some of the old flooring. We've just been doing this in phases as we've had the cash to take care of it. And you can see that here's a good picture here. It shows you the old and the new, a vast difference. It really looks great. We just talked about the probation, pardon, and parole. They are currently housed in the courthouse. They still will need some space in the courthouse. There's a problem with the solicitor's office. We'll get into more detail on this when we get a little bit further in depth in this subject, but it's not just for the solicitors, the solicitor, the public defender. You've got some of the solicitors' offices back in the judges area. That's a big no-no. You don't want to commingle. You want the judges to have their own secure area. That solicitors have got to go through the courts. It's just not a good setup for our current needs. So moving PPP out will allow us to move into those future phases, which will address the public defenders, the solicitor, as well as other needs here in Hillcrest. And we'll get into more detail. This is just a kind of schematic, kind of shows you the area that we're talking about. This, I guess, reddish area here is where PPP is that will be vacated. The exterior, if you haven't noticed, the exterior work really looks great. The outside of this building was really getting worn down. You can see the mold, and the paint was fading. This shows you the paint. If you look at the bottom of the column, especially in the green, you can see it almost looks yellow, and you can see where it. You can see there on the left a lot of the mold. It just was really starting to look worn out. And this is just part of where they started to do the painting. You may not have even noticed this, but it really looks great. I'm really pleased to see that. We still have a problem with the parking lot. Take a good look at that parking lot next time you're out there. And I think the price tag of that parking lot's, north of $200,000. You're talking about $250,000 for that parking lot, but it is falling apart. We will need to address that. And then, we've already talked about this with the building codes and whatnot. So those future projects will be coming to county council during the next couple of fiscal years for sure. This is one that we identified is a problem. Now, we've done a lot of pieces of this puzzle, starting with when I first got here. We started really replacing a lot of the old equipment. Joey was telling me he could no longer get the tubes needed to get the radios work because they weren't selling them on eBay anymore. They were so rare. Our equipment was so old. Now we've replaced through 3 different fiscal years, we've replaced almost $2 million in the 911 equipment. So it's doing really well, except for when it rains. We got to make sure we put everything up on blocks so that our $2 million in equipment doesn't flood. Our 911 center, an emergency operations center, sits in a flood zone. The worst place you could put a 911 center, going forward, we're looking towards the future. Again, we need to get that out of the floodplain because when it's flooding is when we need 911 operating. The other big concern is the fact that our 911 center sits right next to a Class 1 railroad. And those folks in Clinton in particular, you know how many trains run through the county every day. Those trains carry some nasty stuff through the county. If there was to be a derailment and there was to be a problem, the last thing we need is to wipe out our 911 center when we need them most. So there is a desperate need to address our 911, the actual center itself. You can see there it's a $5.8 million price tag that's been identified. That needs to be one of county council's top concerns. It is a remaining issue that has not been addressed. It does need to be addressed along with the LEC. Now, I am proud to say the radios situation, it was a $2.5 million need. The capital sales tax has given us a big boost in the arm, hopefully, on the radios. So we'll be able to get our radios up to speed on our 911 through the capital sales tax. Then we just got the rest. The historic courthouse, again, we did phase 1, which was emergency repairs. Part of the bond was $750,000, the one we just let. That's primarily taking care of the dome at the very top. It was leaking. It was causing problems inside the building. Phase 2, I'm also proud to say, has now been funded by the capital sales tax. Big boost in the arm. Very important structure, historic structure that's very important to this community is this building that we're in right now. That's $4.1 million. The final phase will be what we do on the inside, and that's going to take us years to figure out what we want the inside to be. There's been a lot of talk about what it needs to be and what it can be. That has yet to be determined, and then we can go ahead and do the final phase sometime in the future. And then this building will be set for another 150 years. Quality of life has been extremely important. I'm really proud of the fact that our taxpayers and our voters voted for the referendum primarily for quality of life things such as the new ag center, the libraries, the parks, the Swamp Rabbit Trail investment. These are really important things that are putting Lawrence County on the radar screen and making folks take a good hard look at what's going on there in Lawrence County. We need to take a look at investing in there. And that's one of the reasons we're seeing these subdivisions and this investment coming into the county. One thing you'll see on the bottom right there, which is currently funded through the FELO Special Projects Fund, is 2 new entrance signs. One will be probably at exit 19. There's really no good place, even though I know our county starts around exit 22, almost 23. There's no good place to put it up there, but on exit 19, nice curve in the road. There's that clay hill. You'll see this sign. Andy will be bringing this to you at a council meeting in the very near future to talk about that project a little bit further. And then as you come up from Columbia on 26, exit 60, a traditional one in the median there. Those projects are currently underway. That will be coming back to county council in the next meeting or two. And then other things about parks down at the lake and stuff, there's still a need for looking at getting a place for our citizens to enjoy Lake Greenwood. There's currently no public place. The only public place is on the other side of Greenwood, way down on the other side of the lake. This here shows you a little bit about the corridors. You can see that clay hill there on the left. That will have that sign, and Andy will make it beautiful with landscaping and whatnot there right at the exit 19. So real quickly, this is where we were. When I first got here, we were almost broke based on the way we were burning through our numbers, at least through the audits, what the audits were saying. We were not going to make it through FY18 before we were broke. Things have changed. In 18, we ran a surplus. In 19, we ran a surplus. I didn't have the numbers there, but in 20, you just heard, this is just the general fund. Now, the numbers he talked about, a lot is captured back into the general fund. This is truly just the general fund, which is the main fund of county council. We ran $1 million surplus, $1.2 million surplus, but I want to caution you, in FY21, county council chose in particular not to include the 29% of the LOST sales tax, and that 29% was $850,000. So that 1.2, forget about that 2.1 budgeted surplus. In FY20, that $1.2 million, we budgeted basically to spend all that in FY21. Not that we will, but I just want to caution you before you start figuring you want to spend that 1.2 on something. We are sitting really good on general fund. There is ability for us to take a look at that. This was pre-COVID kinds of things. It was just letting you take a good look at, where we were in terms of financing. This is old data. The timing is ideal. You saw we got 1.5% interest rate there on that, and Sandy got us a really good rate on the bond that we did, the $4 million, and he's going to be bringing some more information on the upcoming capital sales tax. It's an ideal time for us to be borrowing, to be doing investment. The last thing I want to introduce to you, we've talked in the past about, this is your bonded capacity. This again is old data, but basically you're limited in terms of the amount of money that you can borrow. And then again, this is old data, so don't just look at the chart, don't look at the actual numbers. This just kind of said, okay, in 21, let's say we decided we want to spend $5 million on a new LEC and part of the EMS. We would still have bonded capacity. Now we don't want to spend all of our bonded capacity because that doesn't look good to the folks we're borrowing when we go to borrow money from. But then as we pay off debt, that starts to increase again. And I just said, okay, maybe in 2024, we borrow another 5 million. Again, as we pay off debt, that kind of goes away. So there is the ability to borrow additional money, but there is also this tool I wasn't aware of, which is an installment purchase revenue bond. I don't know what that chart means, but there is this other tool. So that 15 million plus, let's just say it's 25 million for the 911 center and for the EMS and the LEC and the coroner, those remaining buildings, let's say it was 25 million, which personally, again, I think is a little bit on the high end. We can't actually do that. We are not necessarily, this is the finance people that I'm very, very much on the edge of my knowledge here of what I'm telling you, but there is this other tool that's out there. We're not restricted in terms of our cap. You can see here with $7 million in bonded capacity, if we were to spend all of it, which again, we don't want to, because we got to make sure we keep a reserve in there. It doesn't look good when we go to borrow money. It makes us have to pay higher interest rates and whatnot. But we would only have 7 million. So how are we going to pay for $25 million worth of buildings? Well, we couldn't, that would continue to be a hurdle, but there is this ability to do this installment purchase revenue bonding tool, which that we can talk about further when we get into that. I think that's about it in terms of where we are. Again, just as a recap, we got the bridges issue, we can ignore it. The only thing this council is faced with right now, the last remaining significant capital investments that we have not had a plan of action to move forward on. I'm proud to say within our 5-year period, we've made so much progress. We've just got to do something with our law enforcement center. We got to do something with our 911 center. And then the EMS continues to be an issue. Any questions?
Anybody on council have any questions for Mr. Tammy? All right. Thank you, sir, for that presentation.
Thank you.
All right. We're done with reports of council. I would like to take a point of personal privilege before we move into old business and recognize our newest employee, Ms. Clarksdale, our new library director, is in the audience this evening. We would like to welcome you to Lawrence County. We are grateful to have you here and look forward to all the great things you're going to do with the county library system. So thank you for joining us. And also, since we didn't do it at the beginning, I'd like to recognize our two newest council members. Mr. David Carroll, representing Council District 7, which is the Clinton area over towards Joanna. We're glad to have you back with us, I guess, as a council member, since your first rodeo. And Mr. Luke Rankin from Hickory Tavern, representing Council District 2. Thank you for being here, and we're great to have you both and look forward to the work we're all going to do together. So moving into old business, first we have public hearing on ordinance 888. The time is 7:10. We will open the floor for public hearing. If anybody would like to speak, please step forward. Seeing nobody, we will close the floor for a public hearing, and we will have third reading on ordinance number 888, which will repeal and replace ordinances number 177, number 571. And this ordinance addresses the boards and commissions appointed by council. Mr. Crookshanks, do you have anything to add to this?
No, sir, I think we've been over that. I think this is a great step forward, and I think it will certainly benefit our current council as we move forward in restructuring.
All righty, that being said, do I have a motion to approve ordinance number 888 on third and final reading?
So move to approve 888 on third reading.
I have a motion by Mr. McDaniel.
Second.
And a second by Mr. Carroll. All of those is there any discussion? Hearing none, we will all vote. All ayes, raise your right hand. Nays like manner. Ms. Walsh, it passes 7-0. All righty, moving next. So for the next meeting in this ordinance, it states to have the appointments completed by the fourth Tuesday in January. So for the four newest, or the two newest elected council members and the two who just recently re-elected, if you will bring back at the next council meeting your nominations for those, or your appointments, and we will approve them as a slate. I have a sheet here that might help you out too, just put them all together. For Mr. Young, Mr. Carroll, and myself, if you have any that you want to change, now would probably be a good time to do that. And like I said, we'll just approve it all as a slate at the next council meeting. Mr. Garrett, however, has already submitted one for the planning commission, and if you would like, we'll go ahead and approve that this week.
Yes, sir. I'd like to nominate Mr. George Austin to the planning commission for District 3. He was a member of the Capital Projects Sales Tax Committee and did a wonderful job. He's also an educator and a business owner within Lawrence County. And I think he'll be an asset to the planning commission and the future of Lawrence.
All right, thank you. I will echo those statements. All those in favor of approving Mr. George Austin to the planning commission as the representative for District 3? Oh, you don't have to, it's just a plan. Yes, ma'am. You're good. So Mr. Austin will be appointed to the planning commission for county council District 3. All those in favor, raise your right hand. It's approved unanimously. I don't know if Mr. Austin's here, but Gary, if you'll please give him congratulations on our behalf.
Oh, thank you.
Next, I'll recognize our EMS director, Mr. Matt Pennington.
Good evening. This is going to be very brief. What I have presented to you is approval for a preventative maintenance contract for our cardiac monitors. This is something that we do every year. It's actually required that we do this so that we can ensure that these are operating effectively and as they should be. It's at a cost of $3,315 for all 13 cardiac monitors, and it would come out of equipment maintenance. It's already budgeted.
This is already budgeted. Wonderful. All righty, you've heard the recommendation by the EMS director. Do I have a motion on the floor to approve Zoll maintenance contract to the tune of $3,315?
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion by Mr. Rankin, second by Mr. McDaniel. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Approved 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. All right, next I'll call Mr. Casey Bolton, Director of Human Resources, for the compensation study. Request for approval bid award.
Thank you, Chairman Patterson. The first item that I have on the agenda is the wage and compensation study, or the compensation study that was requested by council, I believe, in November. HR as well as procurement worked together to do a request for proposals. We submitted those and have all those back. We tabulated them and we have a recommendation. We had 8 people or 8 different organizations that submitted their request for proposal, ranging from $9,000 to $44,500. The $9,000 on the bottom end was a little misleading though, because there were other entities that had additional costs that weren't factored into, that would be additional costs for things that we would expect. The company that we're recommending is Evergreen Solutions, which is a Florida-based company, but they have roots here in South Carolina. They've done significant studies for different entities here. Their total proposal was not to exceed $22,500, and that's including travel, everything. It's an all-inclusive rate to study the positions that we have put out there. We're looking at studying every position that the county has. It's not going to be isolated to different departments and that sort of thing. It's going to be a wholesale evaluation on all of our job descriptions and positions. The company comes well recommended. They have recent knowledge of, they recently did Spartanburg County as well as Spartanburg City. I believe that they have done Beaufort, Dorchester, City of Malden, City of Lancaster, Chester City, significant municipalities in the state of South Carolina. So they certainly have the credentials, I think, and the manpower and the resources to do the project for us, and as well as the expertise. And more importantly, they're going to be able to do it in the requisite time frame that we have. So hopefully we can have it done in time to turn it around for this year's budget for consideration. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to entertain them.
Since you mentioned all of those particular counties, did you talk to the personnel director to see that they like them or not?
Not every county, but I did speak with Spartanburg County and they recommended them. That was one of the more recent.
Are there any other questions? All right, hearing none, I will entertain a motion based on the recommendations of Mr. Bolton.
Just as Mr. Chairman, as a clarification, we would recommend this be funded from the contingency fund.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion from Mr. Carroll to approve
$22,500 max for the compensation study for Evergreen.
out of the contingency fund.
Out of the contingency.
Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion by Mr. Carroll and a second by Mr. McDaniel. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Vote is 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Bolton. I believe the next item is yours too, the Family First Coronavirus Response Act leave policy.
Yes, sir. Again, this is a benefit that was administered through the Department of Labor for response to the COVID Act. It was not renewed in the legislation that just recently, the new stimulus package or the funding for the new coronavirus relief package. It was not funded. It was funded but not required, mandated. So that policy sunset on December 31st, 2020. We were able to get a consensus from council members to extend that till tonight because it's such an important piece of information that we need. We have or such an important project that we need. To date, we've had approximately 97 employees who have used less than 80 hours of COVID leave. 51 employees have used in excess of 80 and less than 240 hours. And we have five employees that have had to utilize over 240 hours of COVID leave, according to our records. That being said, it's a significant benefit. If it sunsets, employees would have to use their vacation time or their sick time, and we have a number of employees that don't have haven't accrued enough to be able to utilize that. The federal government did say that they would continue tax credits, but that doesn't do us any good. in that regard. So the expectation is that a lot of companies will do it. I fully anticipate, and from some of the chatter that I'm hearing from a lot of the HR advisors, that the new administration coming in will probably extend that to some degree. We've requested that we continue that to help facilitate keeping the numbers down here, so that we don't have people coming in to work sick because they don't have the time to pay and can't take leave without pay. So the goal is to keep everybody healthy here in Lawrence County. I think that this is one significant way that we can do that with our employees. Since it has been such a needed program. That being said, I've requested that it be extended to the end of the fiscal year, simply because we don't know when it's going to end. I'm amenable to any extension where it would be evaluated again, or it would be used, or if it were extended through the federal process, it would be a moot point at that point. But with that, I think that it's a significant thing that we need to do. My anticipation is it will not cost us a significant amount of money, because those positions are already budgeted. So it's not going to have a significant impact above the budget. The only way that it would is if we had emergency services or something along those lines that needed to backfill with overtime. So it's going to be pretty much what we've done already. I'll be happy to entertain any questions.
I would like for it just to be extended to the end of the fiscal year, not to the end of the year, but to the end of our fiscal year.
And that's what I had recommended,
Well,
June
I
30th.
said the end of the year.
No, well, the end of the fiscal year. I apologize.
All right.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Comments from the administrator?
Sorry, just moving over here.
All right, I'll just make a comment. I would love to see you come back to us maybe at the second meeting in March 23rd meeting. And
Yes, sir.
maybe, let's see what other counties are doing. I'm all for extending it. I want to take care of our people. I want to take care of them if they're sick, and two, I don't want somebody showing up because they are worried about getting a paycheck. But I'd love to know what other counties are doing. I know there's been some chatter lately, but nobody's really made a decision yet.
I think that every county is waiting to see what the other county's going to do. So,
All right, with that being said, would anybody like to make a motion on this subject?
I make a motion. I would like to move that we extend the Family First Coronavirus Leave Act policy award to extend it until the end of the fiscal year without punishing employees for being sick.
All right, we have a motion from Ms. Anderson.
Second.
Now a second from Mr. Rankin. Is there any further discussion?
Would we, Mr. Chairman, would we want to put language in the resolution to the extent that that would become moot if the federal government takes the initiative to make it mandatory?
I would go ahead on and add that, and I also could add that we would like to just have, since the chair would like for us to look at it again in March, that we can add that into it too. I don't have a problem with either one of them.
Ms. Anderson, do you think if you modified your motion to put it through the second meeting in March, and then we could look at it again at that time and continue it if we needed to, and that way we wouldn't have to put so much language, depending on what the government does or what they push. If we continued it through the second meeting in March, then we can look at it again, and if it seems that they're going to continue it on in perpetuity, we can address that.
I seem like that extending it again and again, so it's not gonna bother the budget, and it's not, so really it could go out to the end of the fiscal year without having a problem at all to the end of the fiscal year. But if, something else happened, I know we have to look at it, but we would have to address it when it comes back up 2 months from now. I just really feel like we could give the staff that much leeway. I know you have people who abuse everything. I understand that, but I'm hoping that we just doing this off of grace and hoping that they will not abuse it.
Mr. Cruikshanks, I think that Ms. Anderson's initial motion was sufficient. Should the national government decide to come up with a new act that would address this, we're covered till the 30th. So if they ended it in April, we're still gonna pay through the 30th. If they extend it to December, then it keeps going after the 30th.
Right.
But I think we're covered.
It could make it move you, you're correct.
I mean, it would make it new, but
Yeah.
we are tonight, Ms. Anderson wants to extend it to the 30th, which I fully agree with, of June. And I think that's what we should go with her original motion.
Mr. Chairman, just for the minutes, I want to make sure that it's clear that this is only pertaining to the quarantine portion. The exposure in the quarantine portion of the Family Cares Act. The Family Cares Act did originally allow for somebody to take time off with pay for care for other people. We're not addressing that piece of the CARES Act. This is only for employees who are exposed and need to be quarantined.
All right. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes 7-0. All right, I think you're still up, Casey. We're moving
Yes.
to new business.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
My next request is with the blessings of Mr. Kamey, and more importantly, the blessings of Regina, is to request that we move her position to Human Resources. The Society of Human Resource Management says that an organization our size should have approximately, turn the page, 6.45 headcounts in HR. We have been able to, I know, how do you have a 0.45 head count? It's a part-time, I assume, but based off their tabulations, we've been able to do things like decentralize some of the functions over the years, and some of those functions, such as payroll, rolls up to finance. So those are considered in that. And so my initial number of 5 was considering those other where that rolls up. But this is going to be a zero cost reallocation. I think that Regina's kind of excited about it. We're definitely excited about the prospects of this occurring so that we can have additional help and support functions. We have a list of things that we can utilize her and in doing. We think that this is going to be a win-win for everybody. She would still have some responsibilities to Mr. Kamey in regards to whatever she needs to do there. We'll certainly facilitate anything like that we need to do. But we all have responsibilities to Mr. Kamey, so we'll certainly all do what we need to do.
All righty. I do have a quick question for the rest of the council. I know currently she's splitting time between the front desk and building codes.
Building and codes, I think she has been completed. I think she's concluded that. We are utilizing her to, since probate is shuttered at this time because of COVID, we're utilizing her to fill some phone calls and to help out in that capacity, which we would probably do regardless.
So she's gonna physically be 100% in your office?
She will physically be there. We'll move phones and the phone lines up there and everything. She'll still be able to have her phone lines, her computer, everything, but it'll just be, she'll be looking out a different window.
I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead, Ms. Ashton.
Number one, it's gonna be a long time. When you get sick. I talked a good little while with Mr. Kamey about this position because I felt like, as far as administration is concerned, that you need an office along with a CEO and an assistant. It shouldn't be an office where there's no one else in the office with you, because you can't rely on one person. I don't want anything to happen to Mr. Kamey, but that's out of my control. But I feel like you need somebody there to answer questions and concerns, regarding any information that someone would like to have. And I took for granted that when they put that position there, they needed the person there. So I can realize that, you can change the way you want to do some things, but I still feel like her presence is necessary. I can go along with this, but I feel like there's 2 things that's on my mind about it. And that you're using her in 2 positions, and when y'all did that before, a couple of months ago, You changed that clerk 1 to a clerk 2. And so I feel like she needs to be a clerk 2 because she's gonna be working in 2 areas. You did it just for the last thing you did. And that part-time position that you have in there, that you don't have anybody in, is a clerk 1.
I'm not aware of having a part-time position.
You don't have one in that, I think you got one
There's one budget.
listed, but I don't know whether you got it, it's not filled.
It's not filled and I wasn't aware of it, to be honest with you.
Okay, well, you have one.
Well-
Now you're gonna run.
Yes, ma'am, but we're gonna close in on that number, that deficit.
But it's okay. But I feel like, there needs to be some justification there as for, pay.
Okay,
I feel like, I think it's just a small difference between the two.
I'm certainly not opposed to paying somebody their worth.
And I feel like that should be done. And I don't know how long this will last. It might be a couple of months from now. Y'all come back and tell me about something else different. But I'm going along with what you have right now, but I really feel like she needs to be a clerk 2. And that, I'm sorry, I'm looking at part-time person. But, I can go along with it if we make those kinds of arrangements.
I have no problem with that. That being a budgetary issue, Mr. Kame, you may have some insight on that or Councilman.
I don't have a problem right now, but that's what her position would be. You know, she still be paid at that, but her position would go up from that, from a clerk 1 to a clerk 2.
Mr. King, do you know the expense difference between a clerk 1 and a clerk 2 by chance?
It's about 75 cents per hour. So it's not significant. There was a $16,000 position, part-time position that was originally budgeted. I don't know if it actually made it into this year's budget. But under Miss Parker, she had requested of council. So this is actually, if you take out the $2,000 more for a clerk 2, you're actually coming out $14,000 in savings by being more efficient and giving Miss Jenkins an opportunity to further her career and do more. She's excited about this opportunity.
How will this affect your office on that side of the building?
I'm sorry?
How will it affect your side of the building, moving that clerk upstairs?
Well, she'll be continuing. We operate as a team, so between Dale's support staff and the support staff upstairs, both in finance and in HR, and she'll still be there. We'll continue to operate as a team.
Is there any other questions from Mr. Bolton? All right, I will be happy to entertain a motion from the floor.
Mr. Chairman, I move that a request for transfer of the position from the administration to human resource be approved along with moving, Ms. Jenkins from a clerk 1 to a clerk 2.
All righty, I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
A second.
I think I heard Mr. Carroll first. So a motion by Ms. Anderson, second by Mr. Carroll. Is there any other discussion? Here none, if you will signify by raising your right hand, to approve the motion. Motion passes 7-0. All righty, then, thank you, Mr. Bolton.
Thank you.
The next thing on the agenda is the annual meeting schedule of county council. As listed as usual, the second and the fourth Tuesday of the month. As required by state law, that we put in this posting and approve with the first meeting of the year. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve this schedule?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Rankin,
Second.
second by Mr. McDaniel. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 7-0. Thank you. All right, next, I'll call on Mr. King for the capital project sales tax implementation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What you have before you is all 16 projects laid out, and you'll see 3 pages of an implementation plan. Now, a lot of the details have yet to be filled in, but this kind of gives us a framework on how to move forward. You can see the Q and the numbers thing. That's basically when we anticipate spending the money. So Q221 would be second quarter of this calendar year, et cetera, et cetera. So under Part A for the first project, which is number one priority of the Capital Sales Tax Committee of Parks, you can kind of see there the anticipated way that we intend to fund these projects. Sandy will be doing a lot of work with the finance folks and the legal folks and getting back to you with that structure and whatnot. But also you'll see there the entity that's already been approved by County Council. So County Council's already approved that they are the entity for each one of these projects. The important part here is the action plan. And again, these are just more of a 30,000 foot view, but hopefully y'all have had a chance to take a look at this implementation plan. Several of the projects that are not County Council, I think there's maybe 4 or so projects that are not us, such as the water tank. We don't have anything to do with those. Those go directly from the treasurer to the entity. We're not involved in the management of the projects, but the projects that we are involved with, which is the bulk of the projects, will be County Council projects. And so the action plan that's laid out there, you can see under each of those items is the proposed action plan. Now, the actual details of these things for all these different projects will come back to County Council as we start working through. Some of these are pretty simple. We're going to buy radios, and hopefully that one will be pretty simple. You buy your radios and you're done. That will be approved by County Council. Some of them are going to be more complex, such as number 2 project, the Clinton Library, where you've got to go through the process of hiring a consultant. You got to go through the design, you got to put it out to bid, then you got to go through the construction and all that kind of stuff. So for example, under the number 2 Clinton Public Library, what I've proposed there under the action plan is that a committee be formed to help us with the design process. And there I'm recommending the city of Clinton, because this is partially funded, at least operation and maintenance piece and land by the city, plus it's located in the city, by the County Council, the library board, and Renita's also agreed with this plan with the library director. She'll also be part of that process. And again, for example, on that project, once council agrees that this is the proper way to move forward by accepting this action plan, we will then form that committee through the means of however council decides we want to go ahead and form that committee, but we'll form that committee and then we will get that committee together. It's going to take some time, but we're going to do these in a transparent and methodical fashion so that we're doing this 100% correct. We'll go through to develop an RFP. That RFP will come back to County Council. Y'all will give us the green light before we even put that RFP out on the street. You may not have any comments, which is fine, but I want to make sure that, again, we're transparent on the process. You'll approve that RFP. Once that RFP is done, we'll actually get those proposals from the consultants. The committee will review those. The committee will make a recommendation back to County Council. And again, County Council in a transparent fashion will approve that RFP. Then we'll work with the committee for, like in this particular project, to go through the design of this facility. It has to stay within budget. There's no more money than what has been allocated by the capital sales tax for this particular project and most of the projects, other than one we're about to talk about in a minute, which is this building. This is the only amount of money that's available. That bid will then go back to County Council. County Council will approve. They'll approve the design. They'll approve the bid. You all, as County Council, will continue to be involved in this process so that we can continue to remain as transparent as possible. Now, in this particular one, I've tried to capture additional thoughts. There's some situations there with operation and maintenance that Sandy will work with on developing an intergovernmental agreement or a memorandum of understanding with the city of Clinton so that we're very clear on who's going to pay for what going forward once this thing's built. So what you see there is the first step on moving forward with actually getting projects to be implemented, built, moving forward. This is a process that's going to take time. We're going to do it right. We're going to do it transparent. So some of the projects are going to be really simple. Medic One, the radios, some of those are going to be really simple. Again, council, you're not approving all the details. You're just approving the basic framework of how I'm proposing, just an idea of how we can move forward on these projects. My recommendation, there's 16 of them here. Again, 4 of them you don't have any say in. There's nothing really for y'all really to weigh in on. 4 or 5 of them, like fountain ends, anything that's not county council as an entity. But those that have county council as an entity, I'm requesting that council approve this framework of how we plan to move forward with these projects. My recommendation is if you have a particular concern about what I've proposed there, that we pull that out and we get the rest of them going forward. I need direction from county council, and I need to make sure we start this process. So of those 12 or so projects that are under county council, if there's 10 of them, y'all are okay with what I've proposed here on moving forward with, some of them are very straightforward, then my recommendation, my request is that county council at least approve those 10. And then we could dive back into the other couple of projects that you want to maybe look at doing some way different.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, just to add to what Mr. Kami has said, I think having an implementation plan on all 16 will get the ball rolling forward. That doesn't mean you can't change that or modify it as things go forward. One of the other guardrails that we have put in and we talked with, Mr. Kami looked at this morning, is a memorandum of understanding, even with the county, as to each project, simply to reemphasize to each project, this is how much money you got, no more. These are the expectations of how it's going to be mechanically, as Mr. Kami was saying about where we get to the project. But then when the project starts rolling, somebody's going to want to check. You know, the contractors obviously don't want to be paid. So we're trying to put some guardrails there. So, okay, bring the invoice, it's going to be reviewed. The treasurer then will review it again and then cut a check. All of those things will be in place, expectations of when the project will be completed, things of that nature, so that is transparent and it is keeping the ball moving forward. I think Mr. Kami and I have talked about this before. It's very critical because this is our first go around with capital projects, that we do this and we do it right. And I think the implementation plan that he's laid out is an excellent start.
All right. Thank you.
But now who's going to be accountable for all the, I'm making sure that they comply with everything they have to comply with, and the money is all done correctly. I know there's got to be some other kind of accountability that has to be followed.
That's what part of the memorandum of understanding is going to be, as to you can certainly have change orders, and I don't know of any project you're going to have a change order, but you can't change the project. Okay.
When do you think you'll have those? Fair.
I'll have, like I said, Mr. Kami looked at it today, and Ms. Burke, I think she just left, but she was in the process of looking at it in the next day or so. I would expect we could have a draft to council that's pretty solid by next meeting.
Okay.
And again, it's just a guardrail. It's not, it's not a detailed punch list of getting a bid and all of that thing, which has gotten done before. This is controlling the funds going out,
I understand.
which I think is going to be very, very critical. The treasurer's office is going to oversee the payment of each one of these.
That's what I want the money
Yes.
to help to be
Yes,
very
ma'am.
apparent, because several people have started these and the money has outgrown what the budget is.
Right.
So you
Well,
have to make sure that you're accountable for.
We've talked to several other counties, and we're trying to put those guardrails in place so that doesn't happen.
All right, thank you, sir.
All right, well, we have a recommendation on the table from the county administrator. Do I have a motion to approve his implementation plan as presented?
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Carroll, second by Mr. Carroll. Is there any discussion on any particular item on the list?
Oh,
I got one on the Ag Center.
Yes, sir.
Who will pick these members of the committee?
Assuming this passes in a few minutes, I was going to instruct Andy, who slid out on us as the park director, because that falls under Andy, to bring back to the council at the next meeting the slate of potential members, and we will approve who's on it. And I would definitely give that recommendation to give it to Andy.
Would a council member be able to throw a name in the hat as far as?
Absolutely. Yeah, sir. Yeah, council will have full say on all these committees that are recommended, and they in state for sure. Any other questions? All right, we have a motion that's been properly seconded. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes 7-0. So since we're still on that, and for what Mr. Young's brought up, the first one, number 2, recommend the committee be formed. Normally I would assign it to the library director, but since you are new, I won't throw you into the loop in so early. So I asked Mr. Kamey to assist Ms. Marshall in bringing us back a slate of members for that committee. As you have prescribed, it includes City of Clinton and the county council members, and the library board and the library director. 5, 7, no more than 7, no less than 5. If you'll work with her and help her on that, I would greatly appreciate it. The next one, number 3, is the county courthouse. Recommendation that a committee be formed. That includes city lines representative and the county council team. I will charge Dell and Billy as our employee liaisons. I'd love to see a couple of recommendations from the city government, employees and our elected officials, as well as community members. And the council member wants to serve on that one as well. I'll recommend you getting a Bill or Dell or Billy, excuse me. Next, number 4 is the Ag Center. Andy is overseeing that project as being over Park Trade and Tourism. I will ask him to bring us back a slate of 5 to 7 community members to be over that project. And once again, any of these council members, if you have a recommendation, definitely reach out and make them, or when it comes back, if you want to add somebody to it, we can look at that as well. The next one, Veterans Monuments Memorial Park. I will, once again, that falls under Andy as a park. I will ask that he and the whoever the current president of the Hall of Heroes may be, is that Ernie slid out on me? I think it's Mr. Buck Buchanan, unless it changed recently. But Ernie and Mr. Buchanan, if he's still president, will be over that, and I'll recommend that they bring back, once again, the same number of recommendations for committee members to work on that project. I believe that's all of the ones that needed a committee. Is there any other I'm missing, Mr. Kamey?
Without reading through it, I can't think of any.
Everything else is direct with council, it looks like, or is this on project? All righty, next on the agenda, we have Ms. Satterfield.
Just as a clarification, in case Dale forgets, we did get a $500,000 grant from the state of South Carolina, through the actions of our local legislators in particular, has identified this asset that we're in right now as a very valuable asset to the state of South Carolina, and have given us $500,000. So with that said, like I said, these projects for the capital sales tax must remain within the budget because there's no extra money. This particular project, however, has an extra $500,000. So the proposal that Dale's about to talk with you about, we can actually move forward quicker than the other projects because of the fact that we have that $500,000 now in cash sitting in our banks. Sorry, Dale.
I'm taking one privilege again. I hate to do that. Chris has to leave. Major Martin of the Sheriff's Office. I just want to thank you for y'all orchestration this weekend of the community cleanup in Watts Mill. Mr. McDaniel and I were both there. It was good to see a lot of folks from our community. We had plenty of the community football team, part of them were there. It was great to see people come out and in a community that's not theirs and support them. So thank you for you and your team for helping orchestrate that. We greatly appreciate it. And I just wanted to say that for you. That's good out. Thank you.
Thank y'all for coming. We got one coming up in
month and a half around Lake Greenwood for those want to attend that one as well.
Definitely let us know. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, because I'd also like to thank them because through Jeff Brown and their efforts, they have really been enforcing the litter in Lawrence County and some good stuff happening there through the sheriff's office. So I come up here and I dare say that in my lifetime in Lawrence County and more so my career working, we are in a very, very bright future. And we've seen many projects displayed tonight, so many good things happening, and not just in Lawrence County, but also downtown here, as I serve on the Main Street Board and see many things that are happening. And I want to thank Mayor Sin for his vision and leadership downtown. City of Lawrence has done some great things down here and continue to do great things. But one of our key pieces down here is this courthouse. So I want to come to you tonight as we are finishing up phase one with the dome and with the smoke detector system is now installed and operating, state-of-the-art system. That particular system currently vacuums and sniffs air out of this room and in the entire building. And it is constantly searching and looking for any kind of smoke or particles that may be in the air. So it is a truly good state-of-the-art smoke detector system. We've also completed, near completion, the dome that's on the courthouse. So we'll be trying to move forward with that. But now it's time to start thinking about phase two and phase three. Now in phase two, we talked about the possibilities of adding an interior elevator and also removing these insets on both sides of the building. Now what that is going to dictate is also trying to get into doing some phase three work, which would be interior to the building. To do those, we've got to do work inside as well, engineering and consulting. So tonight, I would like to bring to you this proposal for $405,014 that would engineer and do all the consulting work to design phase two and phase three. Now, of course, initially we will construct phase two, but the design and all will be completed. And as you lay in bed at night and you can't go to sleep, put your thinking cap on and you vision and say, what can the courthouse be on the inside? What would be a good use for the Lawrence County Courthouse that would bring people downtown, that would make our town special? Because we will be coming to you for those directions as well. So.
All right, thank you. Will you outline for me what the phase three part of the proposal is actually going to do?
Well, phase three, it will totally renovate the interior of the building. We will have to decide what we want this space to be. It can be a council chambers, but also it can be dual purpose. It could be an event space. What do you want downstairs? Those decisions have to be made before you can start laying out wall footprints and deciding, you know, what offices you have and where that goes. But that would be all of phase three, along with new electrical, HVAC, plumbing, which is all gone.
All right, so if I read this correctly, this is going to be design and bid for phase two, which is approved by the CPST.
Correct.
And it's going to go ahead and begin the design part of phase three.
Phase three. Because to do a couple of those portions in phase two, you have to do some phase
We
three.
need to know we're doing phase three. What do you anticipate this company, you know, maybe having some community meetings, or where are they looking for their input from? Just us or the community, or what's the plan on getting input for phase three?
You will direct that for us.
Okay, all right. What's the timeline on needing that information?
I would think we'd have a couple of months before we can kind of direct how we want to do this, and I'll bring back to you if you wish your recommendation. But yes, community input and council input, it would be critical.
All righty. There is a recommendation from the Public Works Director that we approve $405,014 for the design bid of phase 2 and the design phase of phase 3. Do I have a motion for that approval?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Garrett, Ms. McKay. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Youngs. Is there any discussion?
The cost for the bid and design for phase 2 is required to do phase 2 anyway, right?
That's
the cost
correct,
we have
yes.
to have anyway.
Yes.
So that's you finished?
Yes, ma'am.
If that's the 50,000 is for those two designs.
Yes, that covers both of those added together. That 50,000 is the envelope consultant, as they call it. That is the consultant that designs your roof and your exterior to make sure that everything is watertight, waterproof, and works properly.
Okay, those are the things that listed over here on this one. I'll
Yes.
make sure I got that. Okay.
All of that is included in the 405.
One quick question.
I'm worried about that asbestos. That's what I was worried about.
Yes, sir, Mr.
Has council approved the acceptance of the grant?
I don't think so,
I didn't think we had either.
but I think we've got the cash. The way, I don't think it's an actual grant. Lisa, you still here? We've already gotten the cash, right?
We've already got the cash, that's right.
State gave us 500 grand. They've done this
I
before.
still think- I still think-
We're calling it
Okay.
a capital contribution.
I still think for the record, it needs to be accepted by council officials.
Thank you for that.
All right, will you bring this resolution to the next meeting?
Yes.
Official. And to any county employee, somebody hands you a check for $500,000, please take it.
Yeah. I'm not trying to send it back, but at least if you could send me the paperwork you got in the state on that. Thank you.
Is there any other questions or discussion?
Just one more point of clarification. This money does not encumber us from spending the money raised, the total amount raised for the capital project. Since we are spending part of it on phase 2, right? This is not preventing
No,
us
sir.
from spending the rest of the money, the total amount that we budgeted.
No.
Okay.
We still, if your question is, can we spend all of the 500,000? Yes.
No, but we spent all of the money that we raised in the capital project.
Yes, we will spend all the money that's raised, but this will get us to that piece.
Okay.
Yes.
This will be just us throwing more money on top of it, as well.
Yes, this is just accelerating the project. Good
All
question.
right, anything else?
Mr. Stradford,
Yes, sir.
this lead paint and asbestos removal.
Yes, sir.
Company that does that.
What this will do is help us to better define what those costs are going to be, because it's been very difficult to this point to determine what the abatement cost of that is. So
My
this will,
concern- Kind of what my concern is, after it's all done and over, will they sign off, so to speak, saying it's all gone, where it's 10 years now, somebody.
That's correct.
They don't try to sue the county.
yes, sir, that's correct. And just for to clarify, there's no environmental hazard in this building, okay? The asbestos is contained in the floor tile that was manufactured back in the 60s, 70s. It's in the sheetrock mud that they used back in those days. It's concealed, covered. The lead paint is painted over, concealed and covered, which is fine. But when we start tearing out walls or wanting to put in the elevator, then you begin to disturb that. So, yeah.
Thank you for that clarification. I'll now call for the vote. All those in favor of approving $405,014 for the design bid of phase 2 and design of phase 3 for the Lawrence County Historic Courthouse, please raise your right hand. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Do you need to say for the grant? For the grant number? No, we don't get all of it.
Mr. Crookshanks, you good with that?
Yes, I'll bring that resolution to the council next.
All right. Let's see. Mr. Lindley, bring us home tonight.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to also welcome David coming back on council. He was on when I first got hired. And welcome, Mr. Rankin also.
He was born in too.
I have 3 requests tonight. I'll start with the first one, Cross Hill Fire Department donation. This started with Sandy, CenturyLink, had an easement that they wanted us to reapprove. They have some type of, boxes on the Cross Hill substation property. Sandy, got involved with it, got with CenturyLink, and, Sandy asked for them to, pay a fee. And also, he asked if they would do a donation to the Cross Hill Fire Department. That money was received, but we never went back and asked for the donation to be made to the fire department. The total check that they gave the county was $3,000. I'm just asking for the whole $3,000. These volunteer fire departments, we're not able to fund every need that they have. They still have to do donation drives to help. This $3,000 would help them to buy some equipment that they need. And I'm just asking the council to approve that to go back to them.
All right, you've heard the recommendation from the fire director. Are there any questions, or do I have a motion on the floor?
I make a motion to approve that. Transfer to Cross Hill Fire Department, $3,000 donation.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Carroll,
Second.
second by Mr. Rankin. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor of donating $3,000 to the Cross Hill Fire Department from the CenturyLink easement payment, please raise your right hand. Vote passes 7-0.
Thank you, council. My next is the Waterloo Board of Directors. We had the same situation about a year ago with the Eaton Volunteer Fire Department. The Waterloo Board of Directors met on December 8th, and they have signed documents with the state to dissolve their board of directors. And they are requesting that the county take over operations of the Waterloo Fire Department. This fire department has suffered for the past 5 to 6 years without having a volunteer chief. The board of directors has worked very close with us through the years, but they're ready to let the county operate it. The Waterloo station is it is a station that we're actually doing renovations to now to staff it 24 hours a day. We do have a 24-hour crew we call Engine 29 that runs out of that station now. And we will keep the volunteers that are left that's there. We're going to try to recruit more because we still need them. But I'm asking tonight just for council to approve the board's request to the county take over operations of the Waterloo Volunteer Fire Department. And the board is now dissolved, or is dissolved.
You've heard the recommendation from the county fire director to take over the operations of the Waterloo Fire Department, to also include the liquid and capital assets. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Carroll,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Anderson. Is there any questions or discussion?
Mr. Chairman. Rick, why is it not appropriate to dissolve it into surrounding departments?
Well, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked, David. We only have 3 fire departments that butt up to it, or that could be, that could go to. One would have been Ecom, but Ecom itself has came over to county about a year ago. The board dissolved there, and we brought the Ecom station under the county just because of where the Ecom station is located. The building made a lot of sense because of the call volume in the area. That's one of our newer buildings, and we wanted to be able to put people there to respond to back up Western Lawrence Hickory Tavern. And it just made sense. The Waterloo station also butts up to Ecom, but that wasn't a real option. The Cross Hill Fire Department, they already operate 4 stations themselves. They really don't have the manpower to operate 2 more. That would make them operate 6 stations as a volunteer group. The other station, you got Mountville. Mountville Station, we just built them a substation on Milam Road, 25 Mile Road. But Mountville is also very short on volunteers. They've got 4 active members themselves. So they were not in any shape to take on a bigger area. The other reason we've got a paid truck at Waterloo is besides the Lawrence County Fire Department that runs about 1,500 calls a year, the Waterloo Fire Department operates around, responds between 500 to 600 calls a year. It's one of our busiest stations that we've got as far as volunteers in the county. And when you have a fire department such as Waterloo that's only responding to about 30% of the calls, we have to do something to provide protection. So that's why we've got the 24-hour crew is down there now. And it just makes sense if we've already got a 24-hour truck, we're paying to modify the building to put sleeping quarters in, that we would operate it under the county fire service. Doesn't mean we won't, just like at Ecom, we've got about eight volunteers at Ecom. We still need volunteers. We're not trying to do away with volunteers. A matter of fact, I'm still a volunteer myself. I've been one for 30 years. It's just, as these communities, and I hate that we have probably 4 of our volunteer fire departments in Wales that have a strong community backing. Hickory Tavern is one, Western Lawrence is one, Joanna is one, Durban Creek. The rest of our departments are truly suffering. And they have a hard time getting volunteers. And we have to provide a certain level of service on it, so that's the reason why we're asking to do this.
All right, any other discussion? Here now, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, my last request is the Cross Hill Fire Department and the Waterloo Fire Department both received, I call them forestry grants, they're volunteer fire assistance grants. This grant is not a big grant. Most of these grants pay about 50% of what the overall cost is, what you're trying to buy. Cross Hill received a grant. The total grant is $6,027.85. Their grant match, what they'll get back in a check, is $3,013. That $3,013 check will come back to the county to reimburse us for what we're going to pay out in these grants. The Waterloo Volunteer Fire Department received a grant, $12,854 is what they've got to spend. But the grant match that we get back for the fire department is $5,000, and that comes back to the county as well. What we're doing is at Waterloo, they've got a skid unit that's the tank and pump in the back of a pickup truck. It makes it a brush truck. It's an odor unit. As I've come to council in the past several years, what this grant allows us to do is get rid of that skid unit, to buy a new skid unit from Danco that matches every other one we got in the county. So it's the same pump, same motor. It makes it easier for our mechanic to work on it and do the annual service. It replaces that skid unit. And then at Waterloo, in the past years, we've had to go out and buy some used pickup trucks, making the brush trucks. The Cross Hill Fire Department's got a truck already. It's a much newer truck chassis, but it's got a utility body on the back of it. It's 4-wheel drive. What they're doing is they're going to take the body off, and they're going to put a flatbed body on it to make it to a brush truck. So that's what the grant for Cross Hill is for. This is a time-sensitive grant. I have to get all these items purchased, paid for, and send checks back to Columbia before the end of April. These departments don't have, Cross Hill especially, their fund balance is really low. we don't have, I'm just asking the council to go ahead and go ahead and let's approve the whole amount for the 18,881.85 that we'll pay out of the county fund balance. Go ahead and buy all this, and then when these checks come in, there'll be a total of $8,013. We'll take that money and put back into our fund balance. So we're really out about $10,868.85. But we will get money when we take over Waterloo. There's a fund balance there, that kind of thing. So it will wash back out. But I'm just asking council to go ahead and approve this. So I have money to go ahead and get this stuff ordered, get it bid out, get it ordered, get it in here, get it paid for, so we can get these grant checks back.
Thank you. You've heard the recommendation from the fire director. Do I have a motion from the floor for either or both of these grants?
I move that we approve both of the grants and allow Mr. Mills to go ahead on and spend $18,881.85 and be reimbursed from the other fire department later. Since he has that kind of money in his budget.
Just a point of clarification on your motion, Ms. Anderson, are you requesting that the volunteer fire departments refund the county that money? Or you just want the grant?
The grant money.
Okay.
Placed back into the budget.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to clarify, just to make sure.
Okay.
Are you heard Ms. Anderson's motion to approve both of these grants and allow Mr. Lindley to expend $18,881.85 out of the fire fund balance and then to be reimbursed by grants to the tune of $8,013? Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second, Mr. Rankin. Is there any further discussion?
So, Mr. Chairman, do I understand that money is going back into the fire fund? All the money we're talking about is moving around within the fire fund.
Yeah, it would be out $10,868.
The county will be contributing that to the fire fund, but not the other way around.
It'll come out of the fire fund balance, Special Works Fire District balance. They have their own account, separate from our account.
But all the money stays within that account. We're not taking money back out of it.
No.
Just reimbursing the county is just, I didn't understand exactly what we were talking about there.
I think that was not what you heard and what I heard. That's not what was meant. It was meant the county fire.
Good, thank you for the clarification.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you, council.
Thank you, Greg, thank you for all the hard work in this county. Ms. Walsh, anybody sign up for public comments? Seeing none, we will move on to council comments. I'll start with Mr. Rankin.
Just want to say how great it is to be here and to represent District 2 of Lawrence County. I'm excited for the next 4 years of what this council will do. So that's all I have.
Mr. Trill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad to be back. I feel like one of those old TV shows where somebody goes to sleep for 10 years and comes back, but a lot of the problems are the same, but the opportunities I think are different. And I'm looking forward to working with the new council and young folks and new administrator to do some fun things for our county. I think it is a time of unusual opportunity. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Youngs.
No, everything.
All right. Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, very happy to make it into a new year with all of you all. I look forward to continuing on the work that we've done to help improve the lives of the Lawrence County citizens. Some of the work we've already done, we talked about tonight, capital project sales tax. Happy to get it on board, as well as many other things. I'd like to welcome our newly elected members, Mr. Luke Rankin and Mr. David Tribble, as well as our library director, I think she might have left, Ms. Renita Barksdale. And also congratulate our chairman and vice chairman on on being elected. Also like to thank John and Lisa and the finance department for a successful audit for 2 second years in a row. Your work does not go unnoticed, and we appreciate everything that you've done. 2020 was a tough year and COVID has put a strain on everyone in some way. Unfortunately, it's clearly not over yet. And now more than ever, we need to band together to stay safe. Without proper precautions, the economy, jobs, lives, and our healthcare system remain at risk in our state and around the country. To set an example for the rest of Lawrence County and hopefully the state as well, I'd just like to ask each and every one of us while we're here in this session and even in our public lives, make sure we're wearing our masks to encourage everyone around to help curb and flatten, help flatten this curve. We must show a united front during this deadly pandemic. I'd also like to take a point of privilege to share a major concern of mine. We know we've seen the news going on around since last week, and we seem to be at a crossroads in the history of the United States. One of the paths, in my opinion, leads to hate, bigotry, instability, unrest, and lies. The other leads to hope, healing, and empathy for our fellow citizens. The people expect our leaders to do just that, lead. And many have been led astray during the past 4 years and echoed lies and calls for chaos that have now left 5 dead and our country in turmoil. Make no mistake, this shameful chapter in our history is on them and those who support it. The terrorist acts on this day, almost a week ago, will live in infamy. The very people who believe they were protecting the democracy have succeeded in attempting to destroy it. This was a sad day in the history of our great nation. This is not the way. Even when we disagree, violence is never the answer, and order must be restored. There is only one clear path to healing the wounds of our country, and I hope you all will join me on the path to peace and decency. Thank you, and that's my comments.
Thank you, Mr. McDaniel. Ms. Anderson.
I'm glad to see the mayor here this evening, because I was in hysteria a couple of weeks ago when I came to the stoplight, and the stoplight was not there. And everybody was taking over the way they wanted to. And I said, if I get through here, I will not come back this way. And I'm so glad you have a 4-way stop sign up there today when I decided not to go back through the post office way and come this way. So you're on your way. Yeah. As soon as you get the light, do you believe one of the city constituents called me and asked me what happened to the light? But that's neither here nor there. And I'm also gonna ask about the library van, but she left. I want to know, I know that employee died, but I don't know if the library van has started back running. Is it running?
I don't know.
Okay.
I would assume so, but I don't know.
Okay, all right. And another one is that, I love you guys. And so just take what I'm saying as in love, okay? Cause this evening, I just don't really feel like we went by the Robert's Rule of Order. Because when you are making a motion from the floor, a second is not required by the Robert's Rule of Order. And I think I'm correct. But if I'm incorrect, I'm gonna apologize right now. And then, you can correct me next week or whenever you see me. But I don't have any problems about it. I just wanna make sure we do the right thing at the right time. So thank you much.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mr. Carroll.
Absolutely, thank you. Even through the last year and all the things that were going on, I felt really optimistic about our county, more so than I've been here not as long as most people, but 27 years. And we had a consistent kind of county for many, many years. It was, you could expect what you saw is what you got. And the opportunities we have in front of us right now are amazing. The opportunity coming out, being thrust upon us, and then passing that capital penny opportunity and seeing these projects and the investment in the sewer and a major hospital with capacities because of their scale of economy comes into play, and just things that most people don't have, we're just blessed with. So the problems we're dealing with, really opportunities we're dealing with right now over the next 2, 3, 4 years, people are going to be amazed at what we see. And so I'm honored to be a part of that. We finished the Aura Park. I saw, coming down the road, that park looks great. And so that community is pretty happy about that. Finance for another year in a row, 2 years in a row, has done a fantastic job making sure our county is without blemish, that there is no question about what we're doing. So it's awesome to have two new people with someone with lifetime experience and somebody with passions, lifetime full passion, that we're really going to push the needle this year. So I'm just excited and I'm proud to be a part of it.
Thank you. I'll start off by saying thank you to Lisa. She's still here on the clean audit. It's always a positive to know that we are taking care of business properly. It's great to be able to report that to the citizens of the county. I'll echo some of what Jeff said with the growth that's coming. Not everybody sees it on the first day it happens, and then all of a sudden one day they drive by and an Aura Park has been done. But there's a lot of stuff going on in the background. There's a ton of great things headed down the pipe for all parts of Lawrence County. I'm excited about our economic development in the Great Fort area and the Clinton area and our home development in multiple areas throughout this county. And I'm excited and I'm thankful for the comments of my peers that I get to sit as chairman and watch over these projects as they come to fruition. I'll echo some of the sentiments of Mr. McDaniel. Our mayor made a desperate plea over the past few days for our community. We heard from Justin tonight as to how dire the situation is at the hospital. It has gotten to the point that it's not just COVID problems, it is car wreck, heart attack, stroke. There was an article posted I read it on Facebook, I can't remember which news agency. There were 17 ambulances lined outside of Greenville Memorial one day over the past few days, waiting for their patients in their buses to get into the hospital. That's where we're at. And it's gonna take all of us doing our part. You know, Mr. McDaniel said, you know, to wear a mask. If you're within 6 feet of somebody and you're interacting, probably a good idea to wear a mask. I'll continue to preach hand hygiene. There's a bottle of hand sanitizer right here in my desk. It doesn't matter if you wear a mask all day. If you touch something nasty and touch your mask, now COVID's all over your mask and you're gonna breathe it all day. So it's not just social distancing, it's not just masks, it's not just hand hygiene, it's a conglomeration of everything. And also, since I've done since the beginning, educate yourself on what's best for you and your family. Because masks also aren't for everybody. Some people have health issues that require them not to wear a mask and they should take other precautions as such. You gotta do what's best for you. And I'd ask us all, like several of us have said, let's love each other. Let's not ridicule somebody if they don't have a mask on. Because maybe they have a good reason. You don't know what's going on with them at home. And then to love each other so that we can curb this thing and ensure that if your loved one had an injury outside of COVID, they can still get into the hospital. So I echo all those sentiments from everyone. I'm looking forward to a phenomenal 2021. This county has a lot of good things going for it, and I'm excited to work with all of you as we push forward. One last order of business, I will hand you these sheets that go over the commissions. All the descriptions are in the ordinance we approved tonight. One of the requirements in there is that they are an elector, so on the sheet it does have voter registration number. If they don't know it, if you get their date of birth, we can look it up. It's not a big deal. And then by the cutoff for the next meeting, if you can shoot it back to me, you can take a picture on your cell phone. I'll be glad to compile them all and we can approve them at the next meeting so that we have functioning boards and commissions moving forward, because I know some of them have a lot of work to do with all the growing things in this county. So on that note, I will.
Mr. Chairman, before you adjourn,
Mr.
I need to mention that if I need signatures before you leave, please.
All right, you're the county attorney. We have nothing for executive session this evening, so at this point, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Mr. Chairman, real quick, there was
Yes.
a list of a couple things that Ms. Walsh, I guess, put down, if we want to attend the 2021 SCAA annual conference or the Lawrence County NAACP virtual pre-con. Just FYI, I don't know when she needs to know by.
All right, you heard Mr. McDaniel, one of them looking here, January 15th is the NAACP banquet. So if you would like that, I'd recommend you let Ms. Walsh know this evening before you leave, if at all possible. And as far as the aeronautics conference, get with her on the details. I attended last year for the brief meeting with FFA on our capital plan at the airport. It was quite intriguing to learn kind of how that goes on. That's another part of this county that people might not be aware of. They have a lot of up and coming things at the airport that's going to make that hotbed of business in the near future. So thank you, Mr. McDaniel, for pointing that out. Hearing nothing else, I will once again entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. McDaniel. Second by Mr. Carroll. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 7-0. Thank y'all. We will see you.